Very good morning to you all. On behalf of the Center for Policy Dialogue and with the permission of the Chair, Professor Rehman Soman, let me initiate the proceedings of today's dialogue. As you have noted that it is about addressing the Rohingya issues, options for Bangladesh. Since during the last couple of months, this issue has been discussed and sometimes over-discussed from various angles, various perspectives, as the issue evolved. We have seen various actors getting into the process, and we have seen some progress and sometimes met with disappointment. But the issue seems to be going to stay with us for some time. And if that be the case, we need to think through what it actually means for Bangladesh, what are the challenges and what are the options which are available both in the short term, which relates to the refugee management, and also in the medium term, possibly, in terms of their safe repatriation, and what it actually implies for Bangladesh as a country, and what lessons do we take from it, including what we understand the state of affairs in the world. So let me start by thanking you all for being here today. And the keynote presentation will be done by our Executive Director, Dr. Fahmida Khatun. And once she has made her presentation, we will invite a couple of eminent people to make some comments, brief comments, and then we will open up the floor. Those who are sitting in the second ring, please be assured that microphones will be brought to you, and you will also get the opportunity to talk and make your intervention. I will borrow a sentence which I have learned from Ambassador Farooq Soban. Whenever he chairs a session, he says, a moderator is brought in either for a pretty face or to be a good timekeeper. So, since he pretends for the first, I will pretend for the second. So I will be pretty harsh in terms of timekeeping. That's why Professor Soban is not doing that. And I am pretty sure I'm going to lose some friends today. It is an extraordinary gathering we have here. We have here people of different professions and disciplines with very demonstrated performance and experience. We would like to benefit from that. The presentation which will be made by Fahmida, after that, with all your inputs, we'll surely try to collate them and put them in a structured form and prepare a document. That's what we do, and which may be available for public consumption and also for the policymakers. So without much more words from me, let me invite our Executive Director, Fahmida Khatun, to make her presentation. Max 20 minutes.
Thank you, Moderator. I would like to welcome you all to this dialogue at this very early in the morning on a weekend. We're really honored and privileged to have you here. And I would like to thank the Honorable Chief Guest for agreeing to be here this morning, and also the distinguished panelists. Since we are running late, I'll be very short. The time I had been assigned to, I'll try to be even shorter in terms of my presentation. The presentation is based on secondary information and also primary information. On behalf of CPD, a 4-member team had visited some of the Rohingya camps during last month for about 4 days. 4 days to see what is the reality, ground reality. And the presentation I had today has been a collaborative work with me, Mr. Kamruzaman, who is a research associate of CPD, and then Jishana Ramitu and Shubrutu Didi all worked with me on this project. And on behalf of the study team, I would like to acknowledge the support of many, many organizations and individuals in preparing the document. They had supported us in terms of accessing various information and also guiding us throughout the camps in Ukhia and Teknaf of Cox's Bazar. In the interest of time, I wouldn't go through the names, but you can see on the slide. Now, coming to the presentation, just to give you a context how we had and why you have started to think about doing a work on this Rohingya crisis. As you know, the forced displacement of the Rohingya people from Myanmar and their influx to Bangladesh have given rise to a grave situation for Bangladesh with potentially serious consequences from a number of dimensions. And we have seen that several initiatives have been taken at various levels. The government of Bangladesh have been actively engaged to deal with the crisis on a multi-pronged issue, and then international agencies, non-state actors are also working in addressing to deal with the attendant concerns. However, worldwide concern for condemnation of the atrocities of the act by the Myanmar military government, that continues, and every day we are seeing that Rohingyas are taking shelter in Bangladesh. In this backdrop, so we felt that there is a need for a greater awareness about the dimensions of the crisis and to develop an enlightened, consolidated and strategic outlook to resolve the crisis. And taking cognizance of these issues, we have organized this dialogue today, which is called Addressing Rohingya Crisis, Options for Bangladesh. And so the basic objectives for this dialogue are to understand the different dimensions of the Rohingya crisis, such as humanitarian, geopolitical, regional cooperation, security, economic, social and environment, and to assess the implications of the Rohingya crisis for Bangladesh in terms of dealing with the challenges through relief operation and cooperation, resource management, domestic and foreign policies and security measures, and finally to make a set of recommendations for addressing the Rohingya crisis. And we feel that this presentation will set the tone for today's discussion by providing an overview on a host of issues of the Rohingya. As has been mentioned by the moderator, that the issue has been discussed. Every day we are reading in newspapers, in the media, and a number of discussions, dialogues are being held. So this is an over-discussed and widely discussed issue. So I will just give a brief overview of some of the facts which you may already know, but just to carry on the discussions. But before that, the methodology, as I have mentioned, that CPD had gone to collect some of the ground level information and to observe also, to have a first-hand view what is happening on the ground. And during our visit, we had focus group discussions with the Rohingya people and also with the local people. Rohingya people, the ones who have come earlier and those who have just come new. And we also had key informant interviews with the government officials, development workers, local staff, businessmen, small traders, and a discussion with the local people and also at the campsite. Now, so what is the issue? How do we understand the Rohingya crisis? So you all know that there is a historical background, and according to the report of the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, at least 800,000 Muslims in the Rakhine state of Western Myanmar were majority. They identify themselves as Rohingya. And they were stripped of their citizenships and rights to identify themselves by 1982 citizenship law. And they are also subject to many restrictions from day-to-day life. And then the brutal killing of the Rohingya people and violence against them for several decades by the government of Myanmar have forced the Rohingyas to leave their country and take shelter in the neighboring countries, and majority, of course, have fled to Bangladesh. Though the Rohingyas have been coming to Bangladesh for several decades, but a massive influx had happened during the 1991 and 2, and those who had arrived early in the early 90s about 30,000 are living in 2 camps in Cox's Bazar, according to the information available. And in the recent time, the killing and torture of the Rohingyas have started afresh in 2017, and the brutality has been termed as ethnic cleansing by the UNHCR. According to the, there are, the numbers are updated every day. So there are numbers, up-to-date numbers. But the information during our visit we got from the district commissioner of the Cox's Bazar that during 25th August to 25th October, a total of 600,000, about 600,000 Rohingyas have arrived in Cox's Bazar, and around 200,000 Rohingyas were already living in Ukhia and Teknaf Upazila, who arrived during July 2005 to 25th August. So, and they live in the Ukhia, Teknaf, and other nearby camps in Cox's Bazar. So this is a figure which shows how it has been increasing from August till November 5th. You can see that this has been taken from the website of UNOCHA, and it shows that 821,000 Rohingyas have arrived since to the 25th August. And this also shows the distribution of the Rohingyas, where they are located, and mostly, in terms of percentage, 59% are located in Ukhia Upazila, 21% in Teknaf, and the rest, about 20%, in other areas. And this map again clearly shows a better distribution where they are. These are all available in the website. These are not our figure. Now, dealing with the challenges, recent challenges, what has been taken? What initiatives have been taken? Initiatives have been taken in terms of humanitarian support, in terms of diplomatic initiatives, and also other areas. So we have seen that starting from the government to various international organizations, they have taken initiative to provide emergency relief, and the Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief of the Government of Bangladesh and several international organizations have been providing support. And we know that one of the important initiatives was the pledging conference by the United Nations, IOM, UNHCR, OCHA, and co-hosted by Kuwait and the European Union, where a pledge of 434 million was made, and 430 million was sought, but out of that 344 million was committed by 35 sources. So now, according to the UN website, another a total of incoming fund. I mean, out of these 344, now the release of fund is being done every day. So the total incoming fund is equivalent to 143 million as of 10th November. This figure, of course, changes every day. So these are just the numbers. I wouldn't go into those, who is doing what. Now, diplomatic initiatives. So, as I have mentioned, that UNHCR has termed these atrocities as the ethnic cleansing. Our Honorable Prime Minister has made 5-point proposals in order to solve the Rohingya problem. And the UN Security Council calls on Myanmar to end the excessive, the military force and intercommunal violence in Rakhine State. Kofi Annan Commission that calls on Myanmar to resolve Rohingya crisis in Rakhine. The European Union has renewed its sanction against Myanmar until 30th April 2018. The US has declared withdrawal of military assistance from Myanmar in view of this treatment by the Myanmar authorities to the Rohingya people, and they're thinking of, they have reimposed of targeted sanctions. They're thinking to reimpose the third sanctions on Myanmar. Now, in terms of bilateral agreements, Bangladesh's Home Minister had visited Myanmar in October and discussed possible ways to repatriate the Rohingyas back to Myanmar with the Myanmar's Minister for Home Affairs. And during the visit, Bangladesh and Myanmar had signed 2 agreements on security and border cooperation, and they also agreed to take concrete efforts and measures for safe, honorable and secured return of the Rohingyas to their homeland in Myanmar. The legal status of Rohingyas, how they are staying here, what is their identity. Rohingyas have been suffering from identity crisis for long. So despite their contribution to the economy and society, their origin, ethnicity and identity have been questioned by the Myanmar government, and they call them as illegal Bengali immigrants to Myanmar. Bangladesh has strongly opposed Myanmar's official position, as we know, on the ethnic identity of the Rohingyas and as the illegal Bengali immigrants to Myanmar, and the Bangladesh government does not recognize them as the Rohingya refugees from Myanmar, and Bangladesh has defined them as forcefully displaced Myanmar citizen. And so Bangladesh has been issuing identity card. They are doing registration of the Rohingyas and as the Myanmar nationals. The Myanmar nationals have been biometrically registered by the, are being registered biometrically by the Immigration and Passport Department of Bangladesh, and the registered Rohingyas receive support, 3 types of humanitarian support, including relief, medical support and shelter. Now, what is the impact of Rohingya crisis? In the literature, the refugees, the contribution of refugees in many countries is mixed, depending on the length and depending on the location, geographical location, their contribution varies. So there is no any single position on that implication. But this is a unique case, and this is very new. We are feeling this new interest. Because of this new interest, there are very challenges, and these challenges, of course, now we are facing in the short term. So Bangladesh will face several challenges due to the emergent refugee crisis from 3 main aspects: economic, social and environmental. And of course, the extent of the impact of such challenges will depend on the length of the stay. So in terms of economic, social and environmental, we have listed a number of implications. On economic aspect, there may be a crisis in terms of getting adequate employment and the daily wages. We have, during our visit, we have seen that the wages have gone down, and many cost of many services have also gone down. For example, the transport cost of 3-wheelers. So that is there, and then there's a cost of living, increase of prices, and the tourism industry is also apprehended to be affected. In terms of social impact, population size, of course, because we understand that from various statistics that a large number of women are pregnant, and the size of the population is going to increase in the coming days. Health and sanitation, though it is being taken care of, but it's not adequate. The law and order situation, there's a risk. And also the perception of the local people, how do they perceive the entrance of the newcomers to their locality. Environmental impact, land degradation, deforestation, of course, soil erosion, loss of drinking water, waste management. These are some of the broader impacts, and this how they will be impacted I have listed in the on the right side. So in terms of economic, these are very detailed account of how it is being felt. In, for example, as I have mentioned, that there are some opportunities also for the local people. For example, the local students who previously had no work, they are now working with the development partners, and they are those who have passed HSC, they are eligible to work. But on the other hand, the daily wage earners, they are switching their work to work with the aid agencies. So there is another opportunities. And some local people have created small businesses to sell fish, vegetable, bamboo. So some opportunities are there. But on the other hand, it was also reported that the daily wage has gone down. And this is especially true for the camps. And the existing pay is from Taka 400 to 500, but in the camps a day laborer is ready to work for even less, from 150 to 200. So this is one, and the other impact is tourism, because it is apprehended that there is low turnout of tourists, particularly in St. Martin, because there is a ban on ship traffic because of the ongoing unrest. And in addition to regular tourists, a large part would stay at Cox's Bazar before traveling to St. Martin. So those stream will not be there. And some have, one of the tour operators, they said, became that that the risk of losing more than 1 million tourists in this season. So it's their observation. There will be social impact, which I have already shown in terms of population and childbirth, that several NGO workers, they noted that the Rohingyas lack awareness regarding family planning, and the Rohingya population in the camp is likely to increase in the coming days, as I have mentioned. And this is a health concern. You can see that, of course, they have been given shelter and sanitation, but obviously it is very, very poor. So the major needs of the Rohingyas: water, sanitation, bathing place for women, and cooking fuel, particularly the women. So they feel, obviously they feel shy in terms of using the toilets as they are far from their shelters, and taking bathing is also a problem for them. Education, now it has become an issue for both the locals and Rohingyas. Some schools are being used as military barracks to hold the soldiers. Students are skipping colleges, schools in the new camps. They do not teach Bangla for the Rohingyas, and many families, they send their children to Maktabs for Arabic studies. The perception of the local people, we had mixed feelings when we were discussing or talking to them. Many wouldn't talk about them. Whenever we tried to understand what is their feeling about Rohingya, some just kept quiet, but others felt a bit uneasy, because they thought that many of the opportunities will be lost because of the Rohingya coming of the Rohingyas. The law and order situation, there will be an impact and it is feared that in many areas, for example, human trafficking, forced prostitution, fake identity, drug cartel, and SIM cards. We had seen that in one of the camps, one of the Rohingya families, they were using internet, so obviously they had SIM with them. And however, we know that the government has banned telecom operators from selling SIMs to the Rohingyas. So this is a concern. And coming to the environmental impact, there will be many-fold impacts because of the influx. We have tried to list a few. For example, deforestation, land degradation, scarcity of common property resources, indoor air pollution because of the cooking inside the camps, waste management, ecosystem and biodiversity will be affected. So this is the deforestation so far. And there are various figures floating around that how much forest has been, or how much land has been occupied. Most common number is 3,500 acres, and this 3,500 acres is equivalent to 1.67% of Cox's Bazar's forest area and 0.05% of total national forest area. And the district commissioner of the Cox's Bazar district, according to their estimate, this is a preliminary estimate they had discussed a few days back, that about 500 crore have been lost from the forest land. But one has to understand that these are not only land, not only forest, there are many products. So as a whole, the value would be much more than this. So waste generation, that is a problem, because major shelters in the camp area are tarpaulin, aluminium and bamboo, which are, many of them are not disposable. So it will create environmental problem, which is harmful from the environment. Now, coming to the economic aspect. So we had seen there are economic impact of Rohingyas, but the numbers which are floating, what does it mean for the fiscal implications, fiscal measures for the government. This is a number which has been given by UNOCHA. They had sought for this amount. They had said that an amount of 434 million will be required. And then later on, an additional 83.7 million has been sought by UNHCR. So that makes the total 517.78 million. Now, if we juxtapose this number for the entire period from September 2017 to June 2018, keeping in mind that June 2018 will complete the existing financial year, that is financial year 2017 and 18. So for the rest, for these 10 months, if we take that number, how much will be needed to carry on for whole 10 months? That is amount that is equivalent to 882 million, or in terms of Bangladeshi taka 7,126 crore. This is required for 10 months starting from September 2017 to June 2018. So which means that expenditure required per Rohingya for the period of this 10 months is USD 795 per Rohingya for the whole 10 months. Now, okay, what does this? Okay. This I have just shown these figures in the table also. That what does it mean? So it is this 882 million is equivalent to 1.8% of national budget of Bangladesh for the fiscal year 2017 and 18, 0.3% of GDP of fiscal year 2017 and 18, and 2.5% of the total revenue of Bangladesh of this same fiscal year. And in terms of social protection and empowerment, which Bangladesh government makes an allocation, in that, this amount is 13.1% equivalent to that amount. So now we have developed that the two scenarios also. Apart from that 10 months requirement, we because there are many uncertainties right now. The estimation has by the international organizations have been given for 6 months, but we obviously, I mean, anybody would understand that this is a problem which is not solvable so early. So we can anticipate that resources will be required even for a longer period. So if we, based on the last 6 months, if we estimate that how much would be required for the next 6 months, so that is from March 2018 to August 2018, we have estimated that we have the assumptions here that after a certain period there will not be same amount of flow from the international development organizations. There will be a fatigue in the international donor community in terms of mobilizing resources. Then a part of the resources have to be allocated by the government of Bangladesh. So we assume that government pays 50% of the required funds and do not incur the whole amount required. And we also assume that shelter and wash structure from the last period which have been built now, that still remains for the next 6 months. There is no destruction, so it can be used. And we also assume that inflation rate for this fiscal year is 5.8%, which has been estimated in the 7-5-year plan, and the exchange rate remains the same. So this means that the Bangladesh government will have to allocate a resource equivalent to US dollar 167.8 million, or in terms of Bangladeshi taka 1,356 crore, which is equivalent to 0.4% of the budget, Bangladesh's budget this year, and in terms of GDP share 0.1%. The slides I have distributed, I think this may not be there, but in the website this will be, the whole presentation will be there. I think somehow that has been missed. And we have developed the second scenario for the next 6 months, that is from September 2018 to February 2019. Here the assumptions again is that donors do not incur the total requirement, and the government pays 50% of the required funds. And also, since the area is disaster prone, half of the shelters and wash structures have to be built anew. And inflation is 5.7%, according what has been estimated in the 7th five-year plan for fiscal year 2018 and 19, and the exchange rate again based on 7th five-year plan's estimation. And we see that the government will have to allocate US dollar 240 million or Bangladeshi taka 2,000 crore, which is equivalent to 0.8% of the budget for the 2018 and 19. This is based on this medium-term macroeconomic policy stance. As you know, that Bangladesh government the Ministry of Finance prepares the medium-term macroeconomic policy stance for 3 years. So there, the projection of budget for 3 years and various economic indicators are given. So we have taken that number, and that shows it would be about 0.8% of total budget and 0.13% of the share of the GDP. So one of the important issues that we have to bear in mind that there are many shortcomings of such cost estimate, because the cost estimated required by which has been presented by various organizations, these are only indicative. And there are many indirect costs also. These costs are required to address various immediate needs, but those costs which are intrinsic, which are indirect or implicit, that has not been included here. And we hear that there is a plan to relocate the Rohingyas into a new area of Bhasanchar, and there will be cost for development of land and infrastructure for that area, and implicit cost for the loss of ecosystem due to deforestation, and also various health problems, and as a result of various health problems, morbidity, mortality, those costs and various social costs also are not included. So if we can monitor and mind it, many of those costs are not easy to translate into monetary terms. So, and these costs are not, these are irreversible. So, this cost would be very high. I'm finishing in 1 minute. So I've come to the last slides, and so those are the cost issues. Now, coming to the conclusion and recommendations. I mean, there are many recommendations, I understand, and many of you who are here would suggest many more, but I have just listed a few which we thought that quite important. But as I have mentioned, that this crisis has a multidimensional aspect, and while the government of Bangladesh and international and non-government organizations are playing the critical role to provide humanitarian support to the Rohingyas, major global players are yet to take strong positions in resolving the crisis. And in view of the emergent challenges, a number of measures need to be undertaken. Some of these are as follows. The government of Bangladesh has to continue energetic diplomacy, particularly with the regional partners, to solve the problem. Platforms such as BIMSTEC and BCIM, which aim to deepening regional and sub-regional trade, investment and transport connectivity, should be used. Extra-regional platforms such as ASEAN can play an important role. And an in-depth study to assess the short, medium and long-term implications for domestic and foreign resources should be undertaken. All explicit and implicit costs related to the Rohingya crisis should be estimated. Preparation for post-Geneva follow-up meeting for resource mobilization has to begin now. Support for the Rohingyas from the donors such as the World Bank should be in the form of grants only. Hence, the World Bank's grant and loan components should be unpacked. Security measures in the Rohingya camps and adjacent areas, particularly in the southern part of the country, have to be strengthened. The law enforcing agencies have to be vigilant to stop illegal activities, drug trade, trafficking, and terrorism. With this, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, colleagues. Excellencies, Fahmida has given us a very good, insightful and empirically rich presentation. as you will see, there are two parts of the presentation. One part is essentially a record-setting narrative which deals with the background of the problem. That's what she has said as understanding the Rohingya issue. And along with that comes in how the response had been in terms of management or dealing with the problems, both from the government and the international community. So that's one part of it. But that's a background, the context-setting part of the paper. But there is the more substantive part of the paper, which is the new contribution from CPD, is that an reassessment of the implications of this problem in terms of economic, social, and environment. And the point which has been made here is that what actually it will cost the country since last September for the rest of this fiscal year, and assuming that our forcefully displaced guests are going to stay for a longer period, then what it actually means for the next fiscal year 2017 and 18, for which the budget preparation is already in motion. So that two part is very important. And what is important, please do note that the numbers which have been set, Famida, I will request you to put those last two slides, which are not in, it has been circulated on the screen for discussion. So the point is that the cost estimate which have been given is essentially a direct cost, and essentially the monetary costs which are immediately countable. But there are also many other costs, the negative spillovers, starting from the environmental and the social ones, which have not been accounted for in this particular assessment. And that is a much more fundamental things to be done. And to be very honest, some of these costs are irreversible. It is not that they can be really regained with money and etc. So the discussion what we want to have, there is of course a third issue which can be also discussed in this line, is that where the safe return of these refugees. So because these two issues are interconnected, because depending upon the time frame we are talking about, the implications will definitely vary, not only in terms of numbers, but also in terms of qualitative assessment, what it is going to have. So I will request you to keep those things in mind and concentrate on today's discussion on the implication part of it and the financing part of it, both from external sources and from domestic sources, and also looking at the non-government sources and the private philanthropies and others who are in operation too on the field, the non-government organizations. So our today's focus is essentially about assessing the implications and as much as possible dealing with them through monetary or resource means, but also there are other issues which are there. I understand it's very difficult to separate one issue from the other, plus still to keep the focus, to get some kind of understanding, we will try to do that. We are very, very pleased that the Honorable Foreign Secretary is with us today. He is a person possibly most eminently qualified to speak on this issue, not because of the seat he is occupying, but also because of his professional background with the IOM and his many other exposures to international processes. So we will bring in the Foreign Secretary towards the end to respond to the issues. I would like to set the ball rolling and keep my panelists under control, I assure you, and bring the floor as well as early as possible. Let me start with Ambassador Major General Anup Kumar Chakma. He was in Myanmar and he has his exposure from different angles. He is a man of many hats, and I think he can bring in enlighten us from a number of perspectives on this particular issue. General, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
5 to 7 minutes?
I was told 8 minutes anyway. Okay.
Because if we want to have a dialogue, okay, so we
sure.
can bring you back later again.
Okay. Distinguished Chairman, distinguished guests, good morning to you all. It's a matter of great honor for me to be able to speak on the Rohingya issue before an August gathering present here today. Let me start by saying that the Rohingya issue has essentially emanated from a political issue which is nothing but the desire of the Rohingya people to establish their self-determination, including their identity as Rohingya, as well as their right to be citizens of Myanmar. You'd all agree that this issue has now turned out to be very complex and troubling. It is a complex issue because it is no longer, sorry, okay. No longer a problem of, it is a complex issue because it is no longer an internal problem of Myanmar like the problem it has with other ethnic groups like Kachin, Kokans and all. It is troubling because it has spilled over to Bangladesh in such a manner that it has started to seriously threaten the security situation in our country as well as in the entire region. If we carefully study the unfolding events, we will find that certain important economic, geopolitical, and geostrategic factors are in fact standing in the way of the resolution of this problem. I would only speak on the geopolitical factors as I have been advised relating to the resolution of this problem. To understand this, we need to understand the interests of China in Myanmar. I start with this. You all know about it. Shui gas field. All of you know about it. And the pipelines from Shui gas field going to Yunnan province. I'll quickly run over. This is a Shui gas field and then pipeline. This is the situation of the why China has interest in Myanmar. Along with this, they have the oil pipeline completed in August 14. And we also don't know, we don't talk much about other ventures of China. For example, the Mitsun Dam here in Kachin State is a $3.6 billion project, hydropower project, suspended in 2011. But the way situation is unfolding now, we may hear resumption of this suspended project anytime soon. Mind you, China is going out to...
General, would you kindly relate this to the Rohingya issue, please?
Because I was allowed to...
Yes,
I was just,
please.
okay, I'll quickly... what I'm saying, interests of China. I was just asked to talk on this. Okay, yeah, okay. Now, interest of India, have a look at this. Okay, India, see India, road network, going to the Russia and all these things. India also has investment in the this gas field project, China, and then Kaladan multimodal project, India's interest, Sitwe, Calcutta, linking Sitwe and Calcutta, and you all know about it. This is a Sitwe river port being developed by India. And Thailand's interest, in fact, Myanmar is the energy lifeline of Thailand. From all these gas fields, from especially not Shui, but other gas fields, Thailand imports gas from Myanmar. From these gas fields, Thailand imports oil from Myanmar. Daiwei, you all know about the multi-million-dollar project, special economic zone, and the deep sea port in Daiwei, in Myanmar, linking Thailand. This is what is Daiwei all about. Facilities offered by Myanmar draws investment from other countries. Just have a look at the foreign direct investment data. China is the largest investor in Myanmar, and just look at US investment is just 0.51% in Myanmar. That's the latest figure. Singapore, Thailand, they are all investing. So, other countries, about the other countries, I think I should say, I could talk for long, but I would only say that friendship between Myanmar and China, in particular, grew stronger and stronger as a result of China's years of political patronage to Myanmar, especially after Myanmar had been subjected to economic and military sanctions by the USA and its allies since 1988. Therefore, to Myanmar, China is indeed a friend in need. It is a point to be noted to understand why China vetoes all efforts at the UN Security Council to adopt any resolution against Myanmar relating to the Rohingya crisis. And also, it is important to understand the sources of the strength of Myanmar to ignore the concerns of the international community. As regards US's interest in Myanmar, we can sum up saying like this. So I was asked to answer to a few questions. These are number one questions I was asked to ask. Yes, I do think that the Rohingya issue has now drawn the attention of the international community, which is evident from its wide international coverage. All these prove that international community is not only very concerned about the crisis, but also wants to see it resolved as soon as possible. And I will not be wrong if I say that our ongoing diplomatic efforts have largely contributed towards making it an international issue. We hope to see it being resolved through bilateral diplomatic efforts with the support of the international community. Next question asked, this. As I said, this issue was discussed a number of times at the UN Security Council as well as at different forums. These efforts are still underway. We cannot as yet say if these ongoing activities are adequate or not. We have all identified that the solution of this problem lies in the repatriation of all the displaced Rohingyas to their respective places in Myanmar, coupled with their being granted Myanmar citizenship, to let them live in their own country with honor and dignity. The international action plan must be formulated keeping this point in view. Next question asked, this. The present scenario relating to the interests of our powerful countries in the region should let us find the right answers to these questions. It is evident that these countries are engaged in a kind of a chess game, if you allow me to say, in which Rohingyas are being used as pawns and Bangladesh and Myanmar as the chessboard. The earlier this game ends, the better it will be for both the Rohingyas and Bangladesh. The right diplomacy, supported by the international community, may help bring about an end to this game and help Bangladesh safeguard its interest. Last question asked is this. We must ignore that the Myanmar is also carrying out, note the fact that Myanmar is also carrying out its diplomatic efforts. And it is evident from the statements of China and Russia at the UN Security Council. We should note it. I think I should conclude. I would now like to conclude by stating my opinions about certain views being expressed by many with regard to the resolution of the Rohingya crisis. Firstly, the views about international military intervention in Myanmar, like what we saw in Kosovo and other countries. Well, I don't foresee that it will happen here, as any such intervention will be tantamount to attacks against the interests of China and India and other countries. These countries will therefore not support any kind of military intervention against Myanmar. Secondly, the views about the sanction against Myanmar by the USA and its allies, which they have already reimposed in lighter form or are contemplating to reimpose such sanctions. Mind you, earlier sanctions imposed against Myanmar by the USA and its allies proved counterproductive in the sense that these sanctions have only facilitated China to make deeper inroads into Myanmar. And if they reimpose these such sanctions, they will be doing it at the risk of their being alienated further from Myanmar and making their China containment strategy a total failure. Before I finally conclude, I should remind you that we are having to deal with Myanmar, a country which remained under the influence of the military for about 4 decades, and it remains so even today. Therefore, dealings with Myanmar will indeed very, very difficult. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think that was a very good exposure of the geostrategic importance of Myanmar and how it stacks against Bangladesh's interest in certain ways. General Chakma, I just wanted to ask you a very brief intervention on the fact that you had been on the ground, you had been in Yangon, you had been in Myanmar. You couldn't anticipate the evolution of this issue in this particular way, that it will lead to this kind of crisis? Could you anticipate that, given being on the ground?
For your information, I already said it a number of times. During my time, in 2012, it happened. Similar exodus was about to happen. The fact that there are 140,000 internally displaced Rohingyas are there in the IDP camps in Myanmar proves that there was going to be such exodus even in 2012. Following an incident at Mongdo. So what happened at that time in 2012? The government of Bangladesh took a right stand. Bangladesh did not allow the Rohingyas to come across. I came to Bangladesh, made a presentation for about 3 hours to both the high officials here and to the diplomatic correspondents, and went back to Myanmar with that message that Bangladesh will not open the border. And I convinced the Rohingya people there that you must not leave, because at that time they were having as many as 5 members of parliament. I told them, I told here, I told them there also, if you go to Bangladesh, you will be all refugees. If you remain here, even as IDPs, you will be able to establish your rights, your demands. So remain here and fight for your rights. And we could convince the Rohingyas living in the villages. We had people going to villages and telling them, do not be carried away by all such information.
General, and we understand. Just 10 seconds. Do you think that we should have closed the border this time too?
But this time the situation was different. What I'm saying, at that time, we could stop them at the source, even at the villages.
Thank you.
This time they all came at the border, and so many people at the border, crowded people, and Bangladesh could not help it. Okay. So that's what. Okay.
The number, we were overwhelmed by the number in that sense. Okay, let me bring in Professor Imtiaz. Imtiaz is an international relation expert, and particularly he has been doing quite a lot of studies on South Asia and in the region, and have studied these Rohingya issues as well. So we are very pleased to have Imtiaz with us. The floor is yours. 5 to 7 minutes.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, let me, I will not, start talking about the previous speaker. Have huge differences on how you can force people, if they are into something called ethnic cleansing. I think we are forgetting 1971 and why Bangladesh came into being. So I'm not going to go into that. But let me very quickly, since we have the Foreign Secretary here, I had earlier discussions, but let me flag something so that we can have a discussion as to where Bangladesh should go. One, we need to fix a couple of things. We need to fix the, very quickly, this terminology of forcefully displaced Myanmar citizen doesn't make any sense. It's not a legal term. It's absolutely unworkable. And the term is also wrong because they are not Myanmar citizens. Citizen is a legal term. So I think first we need to call them what they are. They are refugees. And that's a legal term. Once you call them refugees, and I don't know why this has, maybe I know a little bit why that happened, but let's fix it. This we need to fix urgently. And then it changes the entire way we need to deal with this particular problem. Once you say refugee, they have to go back. And second thing we need to fix, the very fact that much of the work has been given to IOM, that is unworkable also. The work has to be done by UNHCR. It's not the mandate of IOM. In no way. They don't have the expertise. And I guess the UN agencies and high-ups are also disturbed and sometimes puzzled by this fact. So this has to be fixed very quickly. Number two, we need to, the word I would use is hyper-diplomacy. You can have a normal kind of diplomacy, but you need to have a proactive hyper-diplomacy. And almost in a progression, the more Myanmar takes time, your diplomacy ought to be geared up in that speed. If they are slow, you have to make it fast. That is something that is important. And that would include, and I will say that would include going to China, going to India, to ASEAN countries, to IOC members, high-power delegation. It's absolutely vital. It doesn't matter. All countries have interests. There's no reason why China would not have an interest, why India would not have an interest. But the point is, a high-level delegation to all these countries are required. Perception matters. Perception matters, very important. And the news would come that the whole policy direction is changing because Bangladesh is taking this very seriously and scaling it up. On that, one has to keep in mind that what has happened in the 70s and what has happened in the 90s is not the same thing in 2017. This is absolutely critical. We had the same thing, but this is not the same. Because for the first time, there is an international consensus and there is enough footage to say that a genocide took place. Ethnic cleansing also becomes a problem because it's also not a legal term. But UN has been using it for some time, well, since 1993. One can work on it because it comes under crimes against humanity. But what has happened is genocide. And genocide doesn't mean mass killing. And that's the wrong translation we have in Bangla when we say Gono Hatta. Gono Hatta and genocide is not same. It's intent to destroy, quote unquote, intent to destroy. And the way their rights were taken away is to intend to destroy. And the very fact that they are not agreeing that they are Rohingyas, but they are Bengalis, is an intent to destroy. And so the point is, this has to come very clearly. And since it's a genocide, I think we have a moral high-up, moral ground is on our side. And the international community, there is a consensus. You have France, you have Turkey, you have Malaysia, you have the UN, all are using the word ethnic cleansing genocide. So I see no reason why we are not, using it and making it very clear. Now, since it is a genocide or ethnic cleansing, it cannot be bilateral. No genocide is bilateral. No genocide in the world can be bilateral. It becomes an international issue. Even the issue of rape, as you know, is now an international issue. You can't make it, a bilateral issue and say, well, in a war situation, rape has occurred, so let's do it. You can't do it. So please look into the development in the international legal instruments and all, and you will see that it's high time that we gear it up and say what it is. The third thing is, since it is an international issue, and there's no reason why in multilateralism we cannot have bilateralism, definitely, but bilateralism cannot have multilateralism. Multilateralism can have bilateralism. That's the fact. You can't have the other way. Now, since it is an international issue, it's high time that we start thinking of moving toward the international conference. And the international conference can be done in two ways. One is Rohingyas are not only in Bangladesh. Rohingyas are in several countries of the world, in India, in Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia, in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Indonesia. All these countries have Rohingyas. If that is the case, there is no reason why Bangladesh cannot call a meeting of all these countries to begin with and to see how can we solve together. That will be at the first level. And the second level, then you gear up, bring all the stakeholders and have an international conference to solve once and for all. The second one may take time, but the first one can be done immediately. And finally, the people talk about security issues. Radicalization will not come from the camps. It did not come in the 70s, it did not come in the 90s. Please remember that. Those who talk about radicalization are not, are not aware of history. There were no serious radicalization of the Rohingyas in the 70s and 90s. It will not happen this time. Radicalization will come from the diaspora. You need to have enough comfortable living to be a terrorist. Let me put it very clearly. And we have seen the contemporary terrorism. And that's the issue. And that's precisely the reason why the international community should see this not as a Bangladesh-Myanmar thing. They should see this as a global issue. Because there's diaspora everywhere, the Rohingya diaspora. And not only that, you will have sympathizers. You will have people who will empathize with them. What will happen then? That is the issue. So this militancy or this theory or whatever people are, the security issues, unfortunately, at least I can say, will not come at least at that in the immediate level. If it continues for 10 years, then we don't know. That's a different issue altogether. But what I'm saying, it will come very quickly from the international community. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Very sharp and sound. I just wanted to probe one particular issue, Imtiaz. Listening to General Chakma and listening to you, I'm trying to relate the two, and which you have tried to avoid. The point is that given the analysis that the geostrategic assets are stacked against Bangladesh in the balance vis-a-vis Myanmar, would you still recommend that we move out from soft, silent, diplomatic, bilateral handling to international handling, and we will still be able to manage it?
Absolutely. You see, this is something,
because
I don't know.
Big powers will not like to be exposed at the at global level. They might be engaging at the sub-regional level.
Okay. The Myanmar people, my knowledge of Myanmar a little bit, they are master in creating narratives. Absolutely master. And they have created an interesting narrative, the way you want it. One narrative that they have created is, nothing can be done because democracy will be in trouble. What democracy are we talking about? What kind of parliament do they have? They have 1/3 parliament where you have a permanent representative of the military. How can that be a democracy? Let's be very clear on it. Yes, they're trying. What is this trying? And they found, I think, Aung San Suu Kyi, who is using who? I think it's the military who's using Aung San Suu Kyi, and not the other way around. It's quite clear. So the very fact, this whole idea of democracy, so they have succeeded in that. This is one narrative they have succeeded, and people are buying. So they're, no, you can't disturb Myanmar. The second narrative they have succeeded is the Rohingyas are not, but they're Bengalis. They're not Rohingyas. That they have more or less succeeded throughout the, somehow in the world, that these are Bengalis, and now they're calling, no, these are Bengali immigrants. I'm coming to that. I'm coming. And the third narrative, and this is where I'm getting, third narrative they have succeeded is, if we don't open up, then we can't handle China. They're using this China narrative in an interesting way to the West, that look, we need you, otherwise we can't get away from China. How can you get away from China? Let's find it. Look at the historical relationship between Myanmar and China. But how can you think that China would want instability in that region where they are giving millions of dollars? Which country would want instability in that region? And not to mention, China is one political economy which has always used the theory of abundance. And the theory of abundance is they've always used population.
I didn't follow your answer.
That's the answer I'm saying.
Yeah.
My answer
No,
is
you're
simple.
taking a long way.
No.
You tell me, can we handle
There's a
grand
problem.
powers in the global level?
There's a problem, you can't have one line answer to this. What I'm arguing is, this is what Myanmar is using and we are falling for it. I think whether you're China and that's precisely, I started by saying very simply, send very powerful delegation to China and to Delhi, if not 1, 2, 3, go on and on doing it and tell them what is going on. Believe it or not, it will work.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we will get back to this issue. How can we really handle the grand powers at what level? That will be a lingering point for quite some time for us to deal with. Now that we have heard the geostrategic issues and also some of the international relation-related issues which followed from the other, we want to get back again to directly to the Rohingyas and how we are dealing with them. Because I want to get back again to this financial and financing issues. And for that I want to bring in Dr. Musa, who is the chief executive of BRAC, and BRAC is possibly one of the single largest non-government player on the ground, and Dr. Musa had been recently also attending the Geneva Pledging Conference, so he can bring in a number of perspectives for you over here today. Dr. Musa, 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, I'll begin by saying that there's no question about addressing underlying geopolitical issues through multi-track diplomacies in various ways is the ultimate solution to the problem. And we cannot really get to the bottom-up permanent solution unless we deal with that. Having said that, I would like to really turn to the point that Devapriya mentioned, that so what's happening to these people and what it means. So I'll only make actually 6 large points quickly. Since we are talking about people here and humanitarianism, and our topic today is options for Bangladesh, my first point would be, unfortunately, when it comes to humanitarianism, there is nothing called options. We always go by mandate. It comes from the whole question of morality of humanity. That's where the humanitarianism originates. It comes from the fact that Bangladesh and most of the countries, I believe, we know few who haven't done it, signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It comes from the Humanitarian Charter. So therefore, actually, we do not have any option. When people come in here, they have the right to life with dignity. They have the right to have humanitarian assistance. They have the right to have protection and security. And therefore, my first point is, there's no choice other than meeting that up. However, it would be completely unfair for the global community if it's kept on Bangladesh only. We have seen through the slide presentation earlier that it has a cost, both direct cost and indirect cost. And Bangladesh alone cannot really pick up that cost, and it will be totally unfair, especially when we do not know how long it will go, and especially when we know that it does impact in Bangladesh. Now, my second point, I would like to mention that this whole situation happened in a way that it's a complex one also from humanitarian perspective. We learned so far that it's complex from geopolitical perspective, but from humanitarian perspective, to making sure that humanitarianism also prevails, then it's a complex one. Just take one aspect. We had this time more than 600,000 new people came. We already had 300,000 people came earlier on. So together almost close to 1 million. And they came in an area where we had 500,000 people only in the 2 upazilas of Bangladesh, called Ukhia and Teknaf. So 900,000 people in a place where close to 500,000 Bangladeshis are there. And that is not an area where there are a lot of affluence there before. We also know that Bangladesh at this time, in this year, took hard hit from 2 floods and also other things, and market prices of things are going up in any way. So when we're talking about humanitarianism, we actually have to deal with distinctly the need, humanitarian need of the people, Rohingya people who came here now, people who came here earlier, But equally importantly, if not also more, the host community where these people are residing. Because they are also picking up the cost, they are also poor, there are people who are suffering and struggling. And unless we do that, the total humanitarianism principle will not be fulfilled. So that's my second point, that we as the humanitarian community faced that kind of challenge, that we needed to address all three. And that was complex. That was complex from many perspectives, and I'm not going into details. So then third point I would make, that how the response has been evolving over the last two and a half months. Honestly speaking, by being on the ground several times, from the end of August till to date, and by placing 1,000 of my colleagues who are working there day in and day out, and I must personally go there, I have to say that Bangladesh did an excellent job in managing the huge influx within shorter period of time, at this time, moving people from the kind of roads and kind of from the port where they are arriving, and then moving from there to at least some level of settlement and planning next level. It's a huge challenge, and we are not ready for that kind of speed. It was managed reasonably well to begin with. However, we also are aware that initially there were a lot of emotion that played. So it's not only that government took leadership, it's not only that UN took leadership, it's not only that non-government civil society organizations, both INGOs and Bangladeshi NGOs took initiative, it also individuals, groups, human beings with good heart, they jumped in. While that was extremely helpful in the first few weeks, but we also saw that management-wise that created a lot of chaos, confusion, and also a lot of challenges too. At the end, humanitarianism is a professional job, but you cannot say no to it. We are fortunate that that situation was also managed reasonably well within the first 3 to 4 weeks' time. Having said that, I would say that the situation now is that we have to really move from, still we have kind of need that are in front of us, need in the mid-term, need in the longer term, and as these people are there, we have to address that. And if I said need in the short term?
No, Dr. Musa, when you say mid-term, what time frame you're talking about?
I'm roughly talking about, in short term, I'm talking about right now, from now or beginning September to kind of little bit like around this time. Actual mid-term began. And it's not one phase ends, another phase starts. It's kind of overlapping phase. The mid-term began into, I'm considering will continue something like February and beyond. And longer term, I'm considering kind of between kind of January, February to kind of long. So while June, I understand in the presentation was given because of the fiscal year and budgeting purpose, from humanitarian perspective, I would say that we have crossed the short term. We are in the mid-term now, which will continue beyond February, and kind of longer term will begin around January and will continue for longer term. I'm kind of considering that's the three phases, and we have to act accordingly. Now, I'll quickly mention a few things. I'm not going to detail this, what needs to be done. Immediately, we have few challenges, and I will give these examples. For example, immediate challenges include that we do have water sanitation challenges. We know that water is hugely contaminated. We had 6 million people, 600,000 plus people came in. We needed actually 35,000 toilets. Together, all humanitarian bodies, we could only build around 20,000. And 35,000, that means that as per sphere guideline, you need to put 20 people in one toilet. We just said that, okay, let's put 40. So even then, the people, we couldn't go at the speed it was needed. The terrain was bad, and it was a very difficult thing. So you have to fulfill as per sphere guideline instruction in the way you can go. But that created problem. People continued to have defecation everywhere. Water point is down in the bottom of the hill, they're defecating on the top of the hill. Many of the water sources are contaminated. We need to act on it now, and the action started, but it has to continue. From water sanitation to healthcare, we have winter coming in, and there are challenges related to that. And then we also are concerned about the current shelters. I know the presentation talked about shelters, will continue. Current shelters are mostly plastic shelters. Those plastic shelters run a number of hazardous possibilities, including fire hazard. And unless we really look into the alternative ways of doing shelters that is more kind of conducive for living, I don't think that this is the kind of right kind of thing now. It is fine for makeshift settlement. We had to do it, but we have to move to the kind of different type of settlements. That's why one of the things I was listening to the presentation and thinking, actually, those shelters that so far built are not really going to be appropriate. We have to rebuild as people move to the kind of little bit longer term settlement. I would not make a very long presentation, but I would also highlight, while working with Rohingya refugees in the short term, mid term, long term, with different interventions, we have to simultaneously start working on the development program for the host communities. And development program of the host communities include like work with their ultra poor, help them move forward, help with the market situation, help with their access to financial services, health care, as well as one key thing would be needed, that how do we ensure that there's a kind of conflict that potentially may arise between these two groups could be mitigated, and therefore there has to be active engagement in that whole process. I will not elaborate right now, but if the question comes, I can go for a little bit detail later on. The fourth point, therefore, I would make is about resources. I was glad that this projections made. And in fact, yes, I was also in the Geneva pledging conference, where we went with the hope that global community will be volunteering and come forward with $440 million, but they didn't. In one hand, we appreciate that 335 million came. At the same time, that was 75% of the need as of February. It's a longer term issue. So therefore, we didn't get the full amount. A good thing was that almost many of the countries were there. They talked. Everybody appreciated Bangladesh, Bangladesh government, Bangladesh's people. There's a high appreciation that we hosted. I think 100% of the presentations I listened to throughout the day, and I made a presentation too, there was appreciation for Bangladesh that we accommodated this challenge. At the same time, when coming to giving the money, some big ones, some medium ones, very small ones, and I was thinking, sitting there, and I mentioned, what about you are now giving money up to February? What about after February? And if the enthusiasm level is this now, after February there's a bigger cost. How that bigger cost? And I also emphasize that money has to also come from for the host community simultaneously for the refugee communities. And in that, as I said, we may have to really incur the cost of rebuilding houses, rebuilding water system as people go for the little bit longer term settlement. With that, I go to the fifth point. How has the operation been in recent days? Actually, coordination has been an issue. It improved, as I said at the beginning, we did a good job for moving people from the mud. Women and children, 60% of them children, they're coming and sitting on the street on the mud. I have seen it. It's an extreme damage to the dignity that a human being can face. From there, we quickly moved them to the places where they can have hot meals. That happened. Together, we all did it. But coordination-wise, there are a lot of ambiguities. Who is taking shots? As mentioned a few minutes ago, even within UN, we have IOM, we have UNHCR. And we can understand that it needs to be resolved. Also, between government and UN, I have worked in refugee setting in 4 countries. That included Tanzania, where I dealt with Burundian refugees. In Aurangabad, in Thailand, I dealt with Cambodian refugees. My life had 4 big refugees, longer time. Everywhere there is a clear-cut line of command. That if misses, then there's a problem. We have ambiguities, we need to work on that.
Is this a government issue or is it an international agency issue?
I think it's both. It's both, we need to work on both, and it can be worked out. It needs to sit together and worked out. Unless worked out, there will be ambiguity, there will be confusion. What that lead to? Inefficiency. That also lead to kind of some places more services, some places there is vacant pocket. And that kind of thing happening because management, and I'm a firm believer that it will be overcome, but it needs to be speeded up. And with that, I'll put the last point on my comment is a longer term solution. I cannot avoid saying something here that we do need to do advocacy both for the resources as well as longer term solution, because that's part of the humanitarianism. And I have seen, sitting in the breakfast meeting in Geneva, where it was the most closed door meeting, and I think Devapriya mentioned, can it be resolved? I saw in that group there were about 15 countries were there that had China in one hand, Sweden in another hand, and there were and Switzerland. There were discussions on various types. But I saw people do realize that it needs to be resolved. That realization is there. However, I believe in the fact that it's a multi-track diplomacy that has to happen. It cannot be just political diplomacy that is going to solve. It can be civil society of the two countries. It could be private sector to private sector of the two countries. It could be even civil society, private sector of multiple countries. And unless we promote that, and it could be researcher and researcher of two countries, it could be multi-track diplomacy. And unless we do that, actually the ultimate solution, which is not only just repatriation, it is about safe, voluntary, sustainable repatriation for which a condition has to be created, and that cannot be done only by political means. Politics, of course, will play a big role there. Of course, that's the ultimate solution. But unless we really create that kind of climate there, it would be extremely difficult to people go back there, if they go back. Or otherwise, alternative solution figure out, it would be unfair to keep this problem on Bangladesh. Having said that, let me stop. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Mustafa, I have just one question to you, and now I'll come to the floor. You see, according to the estimate presented by CPD, that, and you mentioned that out of the 434 million requirement estimate, and however it was done, the shortfall was almost $100 million. Also, and now we have projected that till for the next fiscal year, if for till the June and beyond, is another $882 million, which essentially brings you towards $1 billion.
Exactly.
So we are seeking, Bangladesh is seeking $1 billion of external support, additional external support for the Rohingya purposes for the next couple of months in order to come, so that we have more financing predictability in our budget making process and keeping them at the right level. So what do you think? What is the prospect?
I think if we do advocacy, proactive advocacy right now as Bangladesh team to different groups bilaterally and multilaterally, we can secure larger volume than what we'll get if we just sit down and expect that it will come automatically. We have to play leadership roles, set out, get out, and really pursue others and saying that, look, this is not just Bangladesh's problem, this is not just Myanmar's problem, it's an international problem. You have a responsibility.
Well, now you are talking like Imtiaz. It's an international problem. So we'll come to that, and I'm sure the Foreign Secretary will respond to your resource advocacy point very strongly. I hope that will come on the...
Thank you.
Colleagues, we will now open the floor. Please give a big hand to the panelists. Huh? So I see a couple of hands, and we will bring in everybody as much as possible. I have a list over here, and I see many eminent people over here. So my only request is to please do not repeat. Make your point very sharply and as succinct as possible. So I will open the floor. I see I will go both ways. I will take one from this side and another person from that side, and we will come to that. My colleagues will have to help me. Somebody has to stand here and set up a chronological list. Okay, those who have been fast comers and those who are more hesitant in terms of coming in. So we will come to that. So let me start. Please do introduce yourself. You are being recorded. You are being podcasted. Let me alert you that you are fully public now. You are not only limited to this room. So please take the responsibility and do the needful. And CPD will obviously disseminate whatever you are saying to rest of the world. So I will come to that. Ambassador, please. Just start. I will come back.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I cannot guarantee that there will be no repetitions, but I'll try to be as precise as possible. I'll try to emphasize a few points, very specific few points. Number one is, I think the government efforts are quite comprehensive. The coordination of efforts by various stakeholders is a major challenge. Seems to be working well. However, could be further institutionalized. I emphasize the point that could be further institutionalized, the process of coordination. Diplomatic efforts are paying dividends. However, there is common perception that more could be done, particularly to get China, India and Russia to put more pressure on the Myanmar government and military. There has been a demand from many quarters that the atrocities perpetrated by the Myanmar government, the military, the extremist monks and their followers should be identified as genocide and no less, genocide and no less by the government of Bangladesh. I feel this should be given serious consideration. Serious consideration should also be given to organizing the refugees in the camps to undertake much of the work related to their management and maintenance, which would include distribution of relief, help with medical and healthcare services, education and culture, cleanliness and sanitation, as well as security.
Ambassador, I think everybody would agree with those points.
One more point,
yes,
last
please.
point. Creating a powerful and effective alternative universal narrative to counter the Myanmarese narrative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for highlighting those positions. I will come to this side. I want to bring in Major General Abul Hussain, the Director General of the Border Guard, Bangladesh. General, floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I'm Major General Abul Hussain, Director General Border Guard, Bangladesh. Thanks to Dr. Famida giving very informative, especially on the budgetary aspect. I'll talk on the budgetary aspect as well as the political, and in that political there will be security aspect also. Budgetary aspect I'll not be involved much because it is already calculated how much will be required for the short term, long term and also the mid term. I'll talk about the political. I'll only mention two things that all of you know that what has been done in the Rakhine state, and I can say as a border guard chief that yes, I have seen the atrocities, I have seen the ethnic cleansing and the genocide, and it is amply proved by international organizations, and the evidence are on the floor. It can be done. So who has done it? We know, all of you know that the Myanmar has done it, but Myanmar has an implication inside that there is a political government as well as their military people. So are we only dealing with the political people? Are we not capable to deal with the military people? Because if the situation is being controlled by the military people, we should also take them into considerations. And I think the approach should be positive, not in a negative way. Positive in the sense that, yes, I must appreciate the initiative taken by the government because I have seen, I was in the border area, so we have been gone for a war-like situations. All of you know that 18 times they have crossed the border. There are two ways of thinking, okay, we can go for war, and we can also restrain ourselves. So the direction, political direction given from the Bangladesh government, I think it is paying dividend to us. And also the Bangladesh government, what they have done, I think they said also that we can have a joint operation with them. So they didn't have any alternative to blame us. That yes, the people are coming from your side. You have not heard from them that yes, people are going from this side. And also the recent move by our foreign ministry that who are the people involved there, the China, the Thailand, the Laos, because they have the same problems. Though it is a good version with them, with the insurgents, but we are in a bad conditions. But these people are not from our side. That everybody understood. And I think that the international community, all the countries of the world, and everybody understood that it's ethnic cleansing, it's atrocities against the humanity. And the motion is in our favor, I say, in favor of Bangladesh. We have to take the leverage of it, number one. Number two, I would like to say that yes, that is there, bilateral, regional, multilateral, and in that there should be another things that yes, if we need to have to employ the lobbyist to convince the people who needs to be convinced. The lobbyist has to be employed. Also, the civil society, there are people, there are good people. The monks in the Myanmar is very strong. We have also people in our country. There may be good relation between
General, may I ask you a question, direct question?
Yes.
We hear that during the last 24 hours, situations are building up with not only with the Myanmarese border, but with the Indian border, also Rohingyas being pushed into Bangladesh from India. How is that happening?
No, it's, yes, there have been one or two incidents, but we are in very good relation with the border connect forces of India, and we are convinced, and they are also convinced. It is done, actually, that those people are very interested to come this side, because, you know, they have the kith and kin here. So that is the problem. They have the kith and kin here, so they give information the people are coming, moving there. It's there at their own, but it's very negligible. It cannot be mentioned. Only 5 people came one time, and another time it was 21 people. So all have been gone back. We have done that. And we have also told the bordering forces of India that yes, this is the problem. If you are not supporting, then it will be a problem. They understood. So I think there will not be any problem like that. Now I see the solution is like that yes, we have a problem. These people have to be fed there. But Md sir already said that yes, the eradication will not be done within these people, but they have to be confined. You have to segregate the connection with the people from coming outside. So that is very important. They have to be confined, and every work has to be done within that confined camps or anything we have to do, because they have to be segregated. And they have a relation kith and kin in that particular area, because they are not isolated people from that particular area. So that's why if we could take them to in a place where they are not, they don't have a relation with those people. So that is a danger also. So that's why they have to be put in a, if you say is a confined area. Yes, it is confined area. They should not be contacted with any people outside. Only the supporting people should help them, and that should be from the inside. And also the security forces should be all around outside. And
there is no threat that they will just get out of the camps and get integrated with the main population?
It's now we could not confine them. It has to be segregated from the local people and contact of any persons.
Has it been done properly?
It's being done, not done yet. It's being done. It's not being done yet. So that's why they have to be first looked at that. Then you should have the contact with the Myanmar military. I don't know what that will be done. There should be, and in a positive way, because they will understand what crime they have done. And also, I would like to say that I don't know whether it will be possible or not. There are two solutions to curb or to bring the Myanmar military to the terms and conditions. Number one, in the ICC, there should be, I think lawsuit could be done or not, I do not know. It could be done, they will be under pressure. So we know the people who has done it, because which is the unit, who are the commanders, and who was in the hem of the efforts to give the orders. It is counted and it's known to everybody. So if they can be bring to the International Court of Justice, some such pressure will be created to them, and I think the evidence are already there. That could be one. Second, you should have immediate contact with the military engagement with them, and that is very important. And third, I would like to say we have people in our country, the Rakhine people and others, they have very good nexus with the people of Myanmar. They should go and negotiate and find out the solutions. That could be one of the reasons. And I think all of you, the China, India, and Thailand, Myanmar, they have this same problem. They would like to solve this problem. And I think the solution is not that far. And already there are only two things. They have to be repatriated immediately, and there should be a situation created in the Myanmar. The situation already in Myanmar created in the Kofi Annan Advisory Commission, that how they will be repatriated. Yeah. Now the repatriation, I think if there could be a resolution in the Security Council, that yes, there should be a time-bound repatriation, that would solve the problem. Thank you.
I think the internationalization issue has gone up one notch higher by you are asking the known people who are from the armies in the Myanmar side can be taken to the International Court of Justice. You have just taken it one notch higher. Thank you very much. Ambassador Khalikuzaman, I want to bring you in. Microphone, please. You have 2-3 minutes. Ambassador had been located in Myanmar earlier too, sir.
I have noted down few points. It will be from different speakers' point. First thing I'll say about Aung San Suu Kyi. You see, Aung San Suu Kyi, she looks after foreign affairs all right. But the fact remains, she is a de facto. The 25% army personnel is there in the parliament. And the entire power is, you call the border, defense, finance, all is controlled by the army personnel. And she has been given this foreign affairs all right, but she is just a de facto. And she has said, let the civilian government come. When she came down to Situe, which is Rakhine state, and civilian government comes, she will solve the problem. She went round after many, many months. And I have a doubt she can solve the problem or not. And so she is absolutely de facto, she cannot solve the problems. Now, there, Myanmar has a policy. You see, when they burn the houses and this all goes off and the Burmese people come and occupy this, it is difficult for the Rohingya people to come and occupy those places. When repatriation will take place, they may not get back their place. One. The other point I'm trying to say that, you see, some of the people have said, in 1993, when I was there, I stayed for a longer period, we almost closed the border. And we did not allow anybody to come from Myanmar to Bangladesh. But this time, border was open. And they have been coming freely. Still, a lot of people are waiting along the border. So, we strongly
You don't accept the explanation that this time the numbers were too high and we couldn't really manage them, and there is also the humanitarian argument done by Dr. Musa and others.
But still, we should stop them, one. And we are all talking about today in the meeting that how to feed them, international fund, money, and all this we're discussing. I feel this is something I feel, well, the secondary issue. The thousands of people, lakhs of people coming to Myanmar, it is a burden on our people. We cannot tolerate so many people. Chittagong, Cox's Bazar, in that area, if you see, it is a big nuisance.
Understood.
Now.
Okay.
It's a big nuisance. We must stop them. And Myanmar, the problem is created by the Myanmar. They must take back their people. If you see, in 4 centuries, in 8 centuries, these are the people who are there. And Kobi Alawal's time, he was a...
No, we get to the history. We won't be able to finish it today. No,
so,
thank you.
So they must have... And other point is, bilaterally, you cannot win about Myanmar. Myanmar, even United States of America gave sanction in 92, 93. They could not do it. Myanmar is financially very strong.
Understood. Your two points are well taken, sir.
So it has to be multilateral.
Yeah.
Now
no, we take that point. That is coming through.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
It says multilateral. Now this one country is in fact in the remote control, that is China. Russia has joined. So China has to be, as long as China is not convinced, Myanmar will not be convinced.
No.
And other point I like to suggest, maybe that it is our foreign secretary is here, government is doing it, but it has to be done very, very extensively. We may like to send from the foreign office or maybe composite, going around in the country to motivate, to tell the people, countries, the problem we have, different countries, that how to take back was the problem.
Yes.
Otherwise these Rohingyas...
Sir, I will have to stop you now.
No, I like to tell you, these Rohingyas, if they stay for another 1 or 2 years more, they themselves will not like to go back. Other point I like to say, you see, in UNHCR...
No, the point is very well taken, that if we do not solve the problem in the very short run...
this point may be clear. You see, UNHCR did the repatriation. At that time, Senator Bill Richardson came down all the way from... in New York, and then UNHCR term is this, the host government, that means, let's say, Myanmar, Bangladesh, has to agree, and UNHCR has to agree that repatriation has to take place.
I cannot give you any more time, sir. Others will not get the time at all.
If this individual does not agree, Myanmar doesn't agree, we don't agree, he does not go.
Okay, thank you. I think the points are well taken, that you on international front and you are in favor of sealing the border. That is also...
But you are talking about all funding. About the funding...
About Ambassador Farooq Soban.
No, I'm sorry, I'd like to say, about, the funding, Aung San Suu Kyi's remark, she says Bangladesh, unless they exhausted all the money, they will not agree with the repatriation.
Yes.
Please take this point. Very advanced remark.
Thank you. Ambassador Farooq Soban.
Thank you.
I have here with me lots of representatives of the international agencies, and our other colleagues are there, and we have also representatives of the NGOs, international NGOs who are also working in the field. I would like to bring them in very soon, because till now it has been dominated by the geostrategic and international people, but the others are should be brought in soon. Please.
I'll make 3 points. The first is, I think it's important to do a comparative analysis what happened in 78, 91, 92 with what has happened now. So I dealt with this as Director General for the UN in 78 and as Additional Secretary in 91, 92. When the exodus took place at that time, roughly of 300,000 or so Rohingyas, villages were not burnt. There were very few incidents of rape and killing. There were no Buddhist extremists involved in this action at that time. When we began negotiating the repatriation, the Myanmar army, who were in power at that time, did not object to a role for the UN or the UNHCR. In fact, the Under-Secretary General of OCHA played an important role in shuttling between Dhaka and, at that time, Rangoon. And what is extremely important is that access was allowed to the Rakhine province, which has been denied at the moment to the international agencies and the UN. The point I'm trying to make when we do this comparison is that this time round, it looks as though there is an attempt on the part of Myanmar to permanently, within quotes, solve this problem. The fact that this has been done in such large numbers and in the way this action has been taken suggests that a voluntary safe return of the Rohingyas to Myanmar is going to be a very tough sell if it ever happens at all. The way this has happened suggests, and my view is, that the remaining 200,000 or so Rohingyas that are left within Rakhine will soon also be expelled one way or the other.
So within this fiscal year or the next fiscal year?
I cannot say, but within the next, I would say, 3 to 4 months. I would say, so in effect, they are looking for a permanent solution as far as they are concerned of the Rohingya problem. And indeed, in the 70s, we never had a problem using the term Rohingyas. It has now become a problem. And in those days, they were even allowed, they had papers to prove their, at least, identity. Now there are no papers left. So these are genuine problems. So this is my first point in terms of trying to think in terms of an early repatriation of the Rohingyas. I feel that that is unlikely to happen in the near future. My second point, relates to China and India in particular. So what are the main selling points? Recently, Ambassador Munshi Faiz was there also. We visited Beijing. We had an extensive dialogue with 2 of the leading think tanks in Beijing. The point which we tried to impress that the whole Obor Belt Road initiative would be seriously jeopardized in the absence of resolving the Myanmar-Bangladesh impasse at the moment. Whether it's BCIM, whether it's the Maritime Silk Route, or any of the other initiatives that fall within the Belt Road initiative, that these would be jeopardized. And I think this point did resonate with the Chinese authorities. Similarly, in the case of India, we have a number of initiatives, including BIMSTEC, which we feel will be seriously jeopardized in the absence of a solution of this particular problem. I think the other key issue which also needs to be addressed, and there have been references to this, is the potential threat of terrorism. And it comes from many sources, both within but external. I think many of us here are aware of the fact that in IS or Daesh propaganda now, the call for jihad in Rakhine figures very prominently in their narrative. They have made this, in fact, into the #1 priority of IS as they are being expelled from Syria and Iraq. So this is something which the international community, including the Chinese and the Indians, are not taking lightly.
No, you don't believe what Imtiaz was saying, that if we treat them properly, they will not become terrorists.
No, I think when you have...
you said that to have a good living, then it doesn't make it...
No, please. What, just to clarify, you can respond for the way. What I was trying to say is the threat of militancy or terrorism will come from the diaspora first. Because the 70s and 70s and 90s, no militants FMC. That's the...
Okay.
So I'd like to conclude by asking 3 questions, taking advantage of the presence of the Foreign Secretary. One is this debate which we have heard today in terms of the way forward. Are we going to continue to take this dual track approach of multilateral pressure and bilateral talks? Secondly, what do we intend to do in terms of, are we going to refer to this as ethnic cleansing or genocide or both? And what action do we plan to take in the international community in response to this? And my last point is, would he care to comment about ARSA? Because my information is that there are 2 ARSAs in fact. One ARSA is actually promoted by the Myanmar army itself. The so-called actions of August 25th were really inspired by the Myanmar army, and that this was, to put it rather bluntly, a fictitious ARSA used to expel the Rohingyas in the manner that they were expelled. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Faruk Bhai. The Foreign Secretary is telling me he might need another press briefing to address all your questions which you have more in a public way. Colleagues, please hold on for a bit. Please be patient with me. I know. Please be patient with me. I want to bring in now a bit the international agencies who are also active on the ground. And there had been this issue of who actually is doing the coordination and who should be in charge, the so-called IOM versus UNHCR. Let me bring in the participants from the representation from the UNHCR over here. We have Ms. Tayyaba Sharif. What are you, Miss? Yes. Would you kindly give her the microphone, and will you just move the cameras a bit so that we can have a visibility over here? Would you kindly present yourself and then make your points, please?
Okay, good morning. And my name is Tayyaba Sharif. I'm the Senior Protection Officer at UNHCR. My comment is really very short. So UNHCR renews its commitment to continue supporting the government of Bangladesh in their response to the Rohingya issue. Thank you very much.
You have adequate resources to do that? You have adequate resources to do that?
Yes, UNHCR is prepared to support the government.
No, I am asking, do you have adequate resources to do that?
Yeah, UNHCR is working on providing the resources, making...
So that's not a problem for you?
Working on that to make the resources available.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would also like to bring in Asif Munir. He is a migration and refugee expert, now currently with the UNDP. You have been to IOM, haven't you?
I have been with IOM before and currently part-time working with UNDP and some other international agencies as well. So this is not exactly a UNDP position as such, but based on my experience of working currently, UNDP is conducting an assessment with the local communities which have been affected. So partly what CPD has been doing, so it would probably supplement that. I'd probably just bring in 3 points for the sake of time. One is that, and Musa Bhai is here, in terms of the humanitarian work, probably it's time to think in terms of the mid-term and the long-term, the development approach as well, to combine that. Because when you try to put certain people in certain boundaries and whether they will, integrate or not, some of us who have been going even in the last few weeks to the Rohingya communities, certain things are being enforced without any communication or consultation, be it for language, be it them being seen as foreigners. The aid work quite often is being handed down, but less communication. So the issue of advocacy, awareness, also in terms of the awareness with the local communities. The resentment among the local communities is brewing, and some of you who have been talking to some of the communities nearby would probably feel that very much. Combined to that is the issue of the one camp versus other satellite camps. There's so much that you can do. There are limitations of just confining everything to Ukhia and Teknaf. We have heard that from Teknaf, certain people or scattered community in villages, Rohingya community in villages have been asked, or miking have been done in the last few days or weeks for them to move to Ukhia, Kutupalong or nearby camps. There's very little limitations of providing jobs or other opportunities in that area. So that I would request the panelists if you could think. Just the last point, the inter-community dialogue. The local community on the other side of it's very visible even. On one side there are the Bangladeshi villages, and on the other side there are these camps. All these trucks, all these relief material are being provided. Meanwhile, a lot of the social protection mechanisms of the Bangladesh government, the VGF, all the activities are put on hold. Fishing have been put on hold in Naf River, which was the life source or life-saving source for the Bangladeshi communities. So we cannot put life on hold in Bangladesh because there will be this resentment brewing. Thank you very much.
I think that's a very important point. That also goes for me to our economic cost calculations over there. I will come to the back and then I will come back over here, a number of them over here. I want to have a bit more gender balance in the whole discussion. Dr. Malika Banu, the General Secretary of Mahila Parishad, the leading women's organization.
Regarding management, we have some recommendations like special attention during planning and resource allocation. It needs special attention for safety, security of women and children, for prevention of trafficking, forced prostitution, abduction, and further abuse, sexual abuse. We know what is happening there. And law enforcing situation should be strengthened. And also needs special attention or special measure for sanitation, healthcare, psychological counseling. As we know, there are so many pregnant women, victims of rape, and they have undergone trauma. So special attention also needs. And I also agree that dialogue there should be a dialogue between inter-community and between the migrants, displaced persons and the local community, so that what is happening there, why they should be informed properly.
Thank you. I will come to you, sir. I'm trying to have the gender balance here. Shifa Hafiza, Ain Shalish Kendra. We haven't discussed the human rights issue, partly raised by Musa Bhai over there, but do you have any other views? Please don't repeat just.
Mic is not, okay, so working, but all right, fine, thank you. I have really 2 points and 1 small question. Points are, these people, though they came from a very uncivilized country with such a experience, but in this country when they are here and we accepted them as our guest, we should provide the best support and restoring the dignity of the people. By saying so, my recommendation is that I'm hearing continuously about different kind of service provision, humanitarian supports and everything. I think one of the most important issue that you also should consider is to make these people give them some space so that they can think about human rights. They understand the issue of humanity. And though Professor Imtiaz said that it cannot be developed from the camp, but radicalization can be influenced. They can be influenced by it. And particularly the young people who are there, without any kind of interest that they put their time or mind into, they can become more radicalized. So my proposal is to look into this area very seriously and bring those services also to them so that they can be connected with other people. And at the same time, although they will be in the camp, still there should be very good connection between the local people, the local governments and all other
I think the point has been made.
all other authorities and the Rohingya people. There are ways to bring them together.
I think the local dialogue, the participation, this issue, community relation building has been very well taken.
Thank you.
Everywhere.
And my small question is to DG BJP is, as he is saying,
General, your question is asked to you.
They have Keith and Kane in India and other places, so they must be communicating. How they are communicating when they are not supposed to use the communication media? Yeah. And even we saw that they are constantly communicating with Myanmar too.
Yeah.
So
thank you. The
please look into that area.
You have 10 seconds for that, sir. Bol, General. আপনি একটু এটা অফ করেন, নাহলে এটা চালু হবে না।
You know, there is 1 million people and you cannot guard these people, and there are yes, leftists. I think they have the opportunity to communicate. Thank you.
Madam, you used one of those unparliamentary terms which you possibly didn't mean that, the so-called uncivilized. So let us take it out from the record. Yes, I'm coming. I will finish this gender balancing round with Professor Ronak Jahan, and then I will come back now to the both sides.
Actually, I'm not going to ask about women, but I wanted to make one particular point, and that is that the role of international media in terms of our trying to put our stories when we do advocacy. Up to now, I have seen the international media actually has been very active in terms of flagging the plight of the Rohingyas, and particularly the ethnic cleansing or genocide aspects, but not that much of its impact on Bangladesh or the challenges that we are facing. So all the stories that I see in the TV or the newspapers are mostly always about what is happening to the Rohingyas. So I think that we should need to work, particularly our government, a bit more closely to flag the challenges and our burden that we are facing. Secondly, the potential of the conflict between the host community and the Rohingyas that we talked about here. And I think it should resonate in Europe and other places, because they also saw that once the refugees come, initially there is all this welcoming, and then its implications for future conflict. And I think, again, the third is the political, geopolitical sort of situations, the fear of the Islamist jihadists. These stories, I think, have not been flagged all that much. And I think we need to put out some of these stories internationally as we work a bit more closely with the journalists who are coming. Because I've seen also just one point. I find that there was a big story, I think BBC put up, about this chore where we are going to place them and how inhabitable they are and all of that. So I find international media is always quick to point out our limitations, but not so much about our challenges and what we are doing. And my fear is, for instance, very soon, if we try to confine the Rohingyas in a camp, and then some story would come out down the road that, oh, how inhumanly we are treating them that they cannot get out and things of that sort. And just one small question to Fahmida, and that is, I was surprised why the wages are being depressed when you said that it is creating more economic opportunities for some of the people there. So why, if there are more economic opportunities, more competition, I would have thought wages would push up, and why wages are going down? Thank you very much.
Ranaka, in fact, the international media took more than 2 weeks to respond to the Rohingya crisis. As you say, if you compare it with the Syrians and others, they had been very, very, unbalanced in terms of coming up, responding to that. And you are very correct that they really focus more on the plights of the Rohingya, less on the challenges the Bangladesh faces in certain ways. It's well taken. But I'm not quite sure by circulating more the threats and the problems, will it make us, will get us more attention and resources. That's something is to be seen. Fahmida, you want to respond to it immediately? 10 seconds.
Yeah, very short. Because some of the Rohingya, though they are not supposed to, come out, but they are available for the same type of work, and they are ready to work for less. So this is simple, opportunity.
So this is the illegal migrant worker syndrome, which happens in developed country. We are facing that too, in that way. I will come, sir. আপনার কাছ থেকে তারপর আমি এদিকে আসবো হ্যাঁ আসছি
Thank you. My name is Mahmoud Hassan, former ambassador, and I have served in Myanmar in the late 80s. And I had also had the occasion of meeting Aung San Suu Kyi at that time. There are 2 points, I think, which I would like to flag. One is that it has been abundantly made clear from all the discussions that we have had so far that it is a tremendous burden on Bangladesh, these Rohingya refugees, and I would like to call it that Myanmar has launched a non-military aggression on Bangladesh to destabilize Bangladesh economically, socially, environmentally, and otherwise. So this issue needs to be taken up with the first committee of the United Nations, because the first committee deals with security issues and disarmament, and there is a serious security issue facing Bangladesh at this point. The second point that I would like to make, that from all the discussions that we have seen so far, I do not see any sort of a study or a research on the government of Myanmar. How do these people think? How do they take their decisions? What is the mood of the people inside Myanmar regarding Bangladesh, regarding this issue? We are talking about sending these people back, yes, but how are they going to react to this particular issue? What is the sentiment within Myanmar about this particular issue? Because what we understand, there is a lot of negative sort of sentiment within Myanmar about Bangladesh, about Muslims, and about these Rohingyas. Thank you.
Yes, please. Please, sir.
Thank you, moderator. Well, number of issues, as you said, not to repeat, but to begin with, I'm not going to repeat, but to begin with, I would like to welcome the points made by Dr. Musa of BRAC. I think he has given an immediate concern for Bangladesh, how we are resolving the problem, and I think a serious action has to be taken to work out the chain of commands, as he has been on the ground with his vast experience. He has given this one particular message, which I'm sure will be taken by this body. The second point is that we have been hearing right from the beginning, right, I'm not saying the time when Kofi Annan Commission came with its report, and it was welcomed, and Bangladesh welcomed. Prime Minister of Bangladesh also praised his Commission's report. The question is, I'd like to hear from Foreign Secretary, where is the hindrance on getting it rolling? Because if we have at least somewhere to begin with, somewhere to start, which has an international recognition. There are, of course, other points like Bangladesh has moved to China, to our neighbor India, and they have all understood our position. But their message, as I get from the media and other sources, that they want us to talk to them bilaterally, which of course our government is doing very, very, you have seen it, how it is working, and I'm sure it will continue, because this is a bilateral, meaning that we live with our neighbors. We can't just divorce our neighbor and forget about neighbors. We have to learn to live with them. That's one aspect, but at the same time, multilateral approach as the government has taken through through the Prime Minister's, highlighting it in the United Nations forums. This has seen big change that is coming. As you said, it's a little late, but it's coming definitely. Now the question is, why not the ASEAN? I met some of the ASEAN ambassadors privately, casually, and I asked them, I don't see any initiative. He says, well, we are not supposed to take it. I said, you can take it at a bilateral level. This is your concern, our concern, region's concern. And I think when the leaders came from Malaysia, Indonesia to Bangladesh, Bangladesh can take up this as to starting point of arranging some sort of a small conference to activate, so that you see in every sector there should be continuous effort by the government to see, because you see we are not being seen as we are moving in all sectors. We are going to Geneva. I know we are getting support in Geneva, in the United Nations, in other capitals. That's working out very well. But at the same time, we have to make sure, as others have said, that if we are thinking of sending them back, there has to be a lot of groundwork to be done, and there has to be some timetable worked out. Thank you, sir.
Very much. I will just finish on this side and come back to that. Please hold. Please bear with me. We will run it as much as it's necessary. General Harun, and then I will come to former IGP Mr. Huda. আমি আসতেছি আপনার কাছে.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this time. First of all, I'd like to thank CPD for organizing this very important seminar for a very crucial juncture of our national time. I would like to start from saying that when we started this problem of Rohingya, first time we saw it 1978, and then it continued periodically after certain time. Every time we have gone into the bilateral negotiation, and we have partially succeeded, partially not succeeded. This is for the first time the magnitude has gone so far. This is for the first time government of Bangladesh has internationalized the issue, and I would like to congratulate the government for making it such an event where at least United Nations Security Council President has said that it is ethnic cleansing, and this is a big achievement, and now the Rohingya issue is known in the world. I just want to concentrate on two issues. One is the security challenges. The paper presented by the CPD has already mentioned about the economic, social and environmental challenges. But however, the paper does not talk much about the security challenges. I think this is one of the major concerns Bangladesh will have to face. Hypothetically, if the problem persists for more than a year or so, I may say that the resentment within the inmates of the Rohingyas would also become a challenge for the security forces within that area. And again, they would not last long within the camp. They will have to cross over to their homes, and the development of the RSO or ASTA or whatever we call it will become a reality. And we have seen the international community or international Rohingyas supporting them with the arms and ammunition in the past. So that may continue to do so. So security will become one of the major challenges. I think we need to adequately address that one, how we meet that.
Do you think we are not addressing it at this moment?
No, I don't think much about it. Okay. Just by putting on 5 additional police camps would not ensure the security of the rest of the country.
Okay, thank you.
One of the issue is about 800,000 Rohingyas living in one part of the country and a very small part of the country. And I think the presenters have very rightly said one of the most thickly populated area now. the people of that area, those who are host, they are also very poor. They cannot take on such load. But we know that we have friends like the Turkey, Pakistan, Malaysia and Indonesia, those who have come here, those who have made it. How about proposing that they share the burden of these Rohingyas and shifting 200,000, 300,000 to each of the countries?
General, I understand the government of Bangladesh does not encourage third country repatriation, so as it may create
I'm not saying
incentive.
Government encourage or not encourage. I'm saying only Bangladesh hosting 800,000 refugees, but they are not the only one. We also have 300,000 Biharis.
Yeah.
So all the refugees will be burdened on Bangladesh, and we have to take everybody. We cannot sustain that long. So my suggestion would be, if we can repatriate some of the Rohingyas to different other countries, at least it's not the question of money, it's the question of, as we said, social, environmental, all impacts have to be addressed to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Huda.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll make a very brief remarks. I think we are facing a very cruel enemy, and the documentation part is necessary. I notice a greater preoccupation with the financial or the economic implications of the Rohingya issue. But how about documenting what has happened? Just look at if 600,000...
I just wanted to clarify, General Harun also raised that. CPT has done what it has the expertise in. We are not a defense expert or a strategic, the security expert. So we know economics, we have done the economic analysis. So the rest is up to you, sir.
When you say options for Bangladesh, those should also come within the purview of the options, the documentation. Because even if we assume that, let's say, 25% of those who have come are sent back, there is a possibility of, they are again coming to Bangladesh. So we should do the documentation. Just look at if 600,000 people have come and the average family size is 5, I'm sure at least 50,000 people, adult males, have been killed, if not 100,000 by the Myanmarese army. So I think the documentation of at least, let's say, 10,000 individuals should be done, because their testimony with the identification of the person who is the victim should be a good basis for a genocide or crimes against humanity that will be brought before an appropriate court. I think with appropriate efforts, sooner or later Bangladesh should be able to find a court that will take the case. I would also suggest that we can regularly, the Foreign Secretary is here, they regularly ask the Security Council to establish a court to hear the charges of genocide or crimes against humanity. One hopes that the Chinese and the Russians will not use their veto. We can keep testing them. In the meantime, we should seek India's support. I have another specific suggestion. In searching for a court, Bangladesh may also seek a European court ready to accept the case, as was attempted successfully in Spain with the Pinochet case. Or perhaps in the United States under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act. This law allows the President of the United States to prevent individuals who are human rights violators from using U.S. financial institutions, gives the President the right to seize the financial assets of the proscribed individuals, and bans them from travel to the United States. Specifically, we can bring lawsuits in the United States and the UK, claiming from the Myanmar government the costs Bangladesh has incurred in taking care of the Rohingya. If such a suit can be successfully established, Myanmar assets in the UK and the United States, including airplanes, property owned by the Burmese government, can be legally seized. I think we can explore this. The financial implications, other things, if we are too preoccupied, it means we are, this is a fait accompli, that this will be here. So internationally, we can also, lastly, again, I would draw the attention of the Foreign Secretary. We can engage a very good PR firm in the United States and instruct them to develop and implement a massive worldwide campaign to expose the deeds of the Burmese against the Rohingya. Over the next 2 years, the world should confront all the time the horrors perpetuated by the Burmese. The world should identify Burma as a country of cruel sociopaths. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I guess the appointment of the lobbyist will also cost money. I think you should add that amount also to our cost estimate. Yes, I also agree with you on that. General Amsamin, General. I will now go very directly to my colleagues from the diplomatic corps, because many issues have been raised which refers directly to specific countries but doesn't have to be specific country concerns. But we are very, very keen to understand the global community's response and appreciation of the problem. So I'll go to them as well as to my other NGO colleagues over there who are very much on the ground, and a couple of researchers as well. So please.
Thank you.
And we'll have to close that as well, with the Foreign Secretary being there.
Okay. Thank you,
He has
Mr.
prepared
Moderator.
long notes, huh? Please. Please.
I think CPT has done a great work by getting so many ambassadors and generals and academics here. Some knowledgeable parliamentarians' presence would have been good. With that comment, I would start my...
We have an ex-parliamentarian like you.
No.
Yeah. Please carry on.
Okay. This is my view. I don't mean to be harsh or hawkish, but my view is that something is seriously amiss in our discourse regarding the Rohingyas and the Myanmar. Of course, subtle ways, our ambassadors have raised a lot of points, and the police chief, ex-police chief talked about it very directly. There is a need to fully understand the Burmese society, politics and military, and their national objectives. Second point is, we need to understand ourselves. I think we have a mindset which is not working. What is that? Well, we always follow a very soft approach. We totally forget about the realities behind, and we try to depend on others, like international community. They have a big role to play. There are a lot of representation here. But may I make a comment? It may sound harsh, but it's very realistic. International relations today is being conducted on the basis of realism. The international community's response on Rohingya is not because they love Bangladesh or they love Rohingyas or they really love humanitarianism. Humanitarianism is an instrument for achieving their realistic national geopolitical interests. Let us understand that. In that way, we need a serious policy rethink in this country. Why I'm saying all this is, let's take a hindsight, historical perspective. There was an Arakan state. There were Mughals involved in it. The state extended right into Chittagong and beyond to Patuakhali. Is there an implication, a long-term implication? If we really try and go deep into the issues. We have been facing directly from 1978. What have we done since then? 1982 was a benchmark when the Rohingyas were
So let us look towards the future.
Right.
Yeah.
So looking into the future, I agree with Ambassador Farooq Sawan. We are in for a long haul. There are no easy answers.
How long is long?
This may be like, say, historically,
all time to come?
Let's say something like what Palestinians are facing today. Let's not take it so easy.
Achha.
It's a very long haul.
You mean all time to come?
And then I said that the Chinese are a kingpin. Chinese are a kingpin. But they have so much of interest that they probably have forgotten the humanitarian aspect. Yeah. There's another point I'd like to make and probably conclude quickly. I think the Western world has taken a wrong stand on Aung San Suu Kyi. Aung San Suu Kyi personified human rights, democracy, and whatnot. Today she seems to have been abandoned. I think the Western policies should have been following strongly, standing behind her and telling her, don't worry, face your military. You don't want a military government, you don't want a non-democratic system to continue in this country. You have been here so far, your NLD is working on it, and fight against it. Don't go for this narrative which Professor Imtiaz talked about, that democracy will be at jeopardy if they intervene. Actually, she should be encouraged to depart from this undemocratic system, again stand up. But Western world have not really succeeded in doing that. The last point I'd make is about basically the question of the soft approach and the hard approach. We need to combine both. Ambassador General Anup talked about an approach which is hard, or semi-hard. We need now to confront Myanmar, of course, bilaterally as well as with a stronger approach. We are only taking a soft approach. There is a need of security which has been highlighted. Even in this discourse, we need a deeper study on the security implications because it affects the development as well. And in that approach, I'd say the old maxim, if you want peace, prepare for war. Are we as a nation thinking about defending ourselves, our territories, our integrity, and what preparation we need to take?
Okay.
And this is about the government of Bangladesh.
Good moment to close.
One point, just one, maybe 3 seconds. The government of Bangladesh needs to look seriously about this issue. It's not just a foreign ministry affair. It's not just a home ministry affair. It's a national affair. A national strategy needs to be worked out. And defense is prepared accordingly.
Thank you, sir. I think the whole government approach is coming in very much, and I will not dare to comment on your hawkish versus dovish approach over here. We can discuss that. Ami ashchi. Brigadier Shafat, apni kothay achen? Apnar kache ami ashchi. Brigadier Shafat has been researching on the Rohingya issues for some time now. I'll just give you the floors.
Thank you, Mr. I'm probably the lone person doing PhD on Myanmar in Bangladesh. Worldwide, there is a figure that probably over 200 PhDs has been done, but probably I'm the first one from Bangladesh. Incidentally, there is another lady who has done PhD regarding Rohingya, but not from Bangladesh. A Bangladeshi student from IR department, Kazi Farzana Farhat, but she did it from Malaysia. This is on the citizenship of the Rohingyas. This has been published as a book. It's a good reference from where you can take help. Now, I'll only comment on 2 things. I've been working for last 4 years. It's very interesting. And as people have commented, that Myanmar is a very different country. The society, their people are not exactly what we are.
And all countries are different.
They are, but then probably much different, much different. So we need to understand, we need to study them. We need to know who they are, what are their ethos, what are their characteristics, how much are they affected by the religious sentiments.
Why don't you reflect a bit on the solutions?
Okay. Now coming to that, as Ambassador Farooq Subhan said, probably it is not going to be a short term or mid term, long term. Probably this would be another Palestine issue, or maybe like Biharis. They have become probably burden for us in any way. They'll remain here. Because way back in mid-70s, the Burmese government decided that they will evict the Rohingyas from Burma. And accordingly, General Tin U, who later on became the chairman of the NLD, he addressed the local officials, in which there was one Rohingya, incidentally a professor from the botany from the local college attended it, not knowing that he is not a Burmese. So there he commented that in 20 years' time they will solve the Rohingya problem. They could not do it. But later on, as you have seen, when in 2012, President Thein Sein commented that they would like these people to get out of Burma and let the world take them. And today, General Hilang had categorically said that what others could not achieve in the past, we have achieved it. So that means they are not going to take them back, whether at all they will. Another issue is...
So we should take measures to integrate them properly in the country?
No. Now what you need to do is to as Professor Imtiaz said, we have to go very aggressively, aggressive diplomacy. We have to convince the world that they are the people of Myanmar.
Okay.
Because you have to counter the allegation
No,
that
for those measures have been suggested, number
of
them, in the last 2 hours, yes.
That is to be done. Well, another thing is, I feel that we need to carry out serious studies on Myanmar and things related to Myanmar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's very good. I think the knowledge and understanding of the Myanmar situation is very, very important. That is coming through. Colleagues, I will bring in, before I bring in the colleagues, I am holding back a couple of you for the end part to respond some of them once I get my expert colleagues on board. I wanted to bring in Professor Sukumal Borua. I will say. And he is the president of the Buddhist Federation in Bangladesh and also politically involved. Please.
আমি একটু কি বাংলা বলতে পারবো? ওকে।
Sure. By language of choice.
যেহেতু মাতৃভাষা বাংলা, একটু বাংলা বলে স্বস্তি বোধ করব আমরা। তো আমি আপনাদেরকে ধন্যবাদ জানাই। Firstly, I would like to draw your kind attention that you have arranged a very distinguished program in this morning. And I thanks and convey my gratitude to you, sir, and all of participants here. প্রথমে আমি একটি জিনিস আপনাদের দৃষ্টি আকর্ষণ করতে চাই। There is not religious issue. এটা কোনো ধর্মীয় ইস্যু না এবং এটা কোনো বুদ্ধিস্ট এবং মুসলিমস কোনো ইস্যু নয়। এটা কোনো এখানে এসেছে যে বুদ্ধিস্ট এইসব ভিক্ষু মংসরা এইসব করছে, এটা আমার মনে হয় এটা একটা স্টেট এবং একটা রাষ্ট্রের একটা ইস্যু। এদের ভূখণ্ড এবং এদের জিওগ্রাফিক্যালি যে কতটুকু যে সমস্যার সৃষ্টি হয়, এই জন্য বাংলাদেশে হয়, বিশ্বেও হয়। আমি একটু দৃষ্টি আকর্ষণ করতে চাই এই জন্যে, যেমন সিরিয়াতে তো কোনো বুদ্ধিস্ট নেই, সিরিয়া এবং অন্যান্য দেশে যে লিবিয়া, সেখানে কেন সংঘাত হয়? এই সংঘাতটা কেন সেখানে হচ্ছে? সেখানে ভাই ভাই আমরা ভ্রাতা, ভাই ভাইয়ের মধ্যে মুসলিমদের মধ্যে কেন সংঘাতটা হচ্ছে? এই জন্য আমার মনে হয় এই বিষয়গুলোকে আমরা সেইভাবে দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি দিয়ে দেখা উচিত বলে আমি একটু মনে করি। এবং আমার দৃষ্টিভঙ্গিতে কজেস অফ রোহিঙ্গাস ইস্যুস হুইচ ইজ হ্যাপেনিং, দেয়ার আর মেজর 8 causes in my views for Rohingya. 8 views আমি একটা বলছি, খুব
You have to be very brief, sir.
Brief, sir. এখন প্রথম যেটা বলছি, এটা জাতিগত সমস্যা আছে এখানে এবং ভাষাগত একটা সমস্যা আছে। দ্বিতীয়ত হচ্ছে দায়িত্বটা কার ছিল, যেহেতু আমরা নেইবারিং কান্ট্রি। আমি তো দৃষ্টি আকর্ষণ করতে যে এখানে আমাদের হিজ এক্সেলেন্সি দ্য ফরেন সেক্রেটারি এখানে আছে, দীর্ঘদিন ধরে এই ইস্যুটা সেখানে জীবিত ছিল।
Professor Borua, what I would request you please to focus on the solutions. We understand the problems, more or less.
না, প্রবলেমসটা একটু বলতে হবে এই জন্যই, কারণ আমরা যেহেতু এখানে বসবাস করি আমাদের উপর সেটা আসছে, এই জন্য আমরা আমাদের প্রবলেমগুলো আমি বলতে চাই। এবং সেখানে যে আমাদের নেইবারিং কান্ট্রির উপর আমার মনে হয় বাংলাদেশের একটা, আমরা অন্যদিকে থাকিয়েছি সবসময়, আমরা ভারতের দিকে সবসময় থাকিয়েছি, আমরা চাইনার দিকে সবসময় থাকিয়েছি, কিন্তু যে পার্শ্ববর্তী যে একটা দেশ ছিল দীর্ঘদিন ধরে যে আমরা সেখানে বসবাস ছিল, আমাদের ট্রেড এন্ড কমার্স যে আমাদের একটা কমিউনিকেশন, ওয়েল কমিউনিকেশন এনশিয়েন্ট ডিউরিং দ্য এনশিয়েন্ট পিরিয়ড অ্যান্ড প্রিভিয়াস পিরিয়ড, বাংলাদেশ এবং রোহিঙ্গার মধ্যে মিয়ানমার মধ্যবর্তী সম্পর্কটা আমরা সেইভাবে গড়ে তুলতে পারিনি এবং আমরা অবহেলা করেছি। আজকে আপনি একটু দৃষ্টি আকর্ষণ করতে চাই, ভারত দেখেন তার পার্শ্ববর্তী দেশ ভুটান, নেপাল, শ্রীলঙ্কা, এমনকি যে মালদ্বীপ, এদের সঙ্গে প্রথমে কিন্তু সংকট, এদের মধ্যে সম্পর্কটা কিন্তু গভীর করতে চায়, কারণ নেইবারিং কান্ট্রির সঙ্গে যদি আমার সম্পর্কটা না থাকে, এই জন্য আমার মনে হয় বাংলাদেশ সবসময় আমার মনে হয় যে রাখায় আমাদের যে করেছি, এই জন্য আমার একটু করে আমার লেগেছে এটা। তো এই জন্যই গুড ফ্রেন্ডশিপ বোধ তৈরি করতে পারিনি আমরা, এই জিনিসটা দেখছি। আর জিনিসটা হচ্ছে এইটাই, জাতিসংঘের একটা নীরব এখানে পৃষ্ঠপোষকতা দেখছি আমি জাতিসংঘ সহ আন্তর্জাতিক সংস্থা, যেটা খুবই একবারে গভীরভাবে সূক্ষ্মভাবে কাজ করছে এই দেশকে উত্তেজনা করার জন্য। সেখানে প্রভুত্ববাদী এবং পুঁজিবাদী একটা বিষয় এবং তাদের যে ভৌগোলিক বিভিন্ন ধরনের সেখানে যে সম্পদগুলো আছে তারা কিভাবে নিতে পারে, এটা একটা অত্যন্ত সূক্ষ্মভাবে তারা কাজ করছে। এই জন্যই আমার আমার সাজেশন থাকবে, বাংলাদেশ গভর্নমেন্ট শুধু তৈরি করা ইস্যুতে কিন্তু আমরা যাচ্ছি, কিন্তু নিজেরা কোনো দৌড়াদৌড়ি করে বিভিন্নভাবে গিয়ে, আমি বাংলাদেশ সরকারকে, আমি যেহেতু মাতৃভাষা আমার বাংলাদেশ, আমার বাংলাদেশের সম্পর্কে আমি কথা বলতে চাই যে বাংলাদেশ নিজে ইচ্ছা করে, যেমন 78 বা 92-তে যেভাবে আমরা গিয়েছিলাম, এবং আমার মনে হয় শুধু যেমন কমনওয়েলথের যেটা সংগঠন এটা সেখানে মিটিং করছে সেখানে আমি যাচ্ছি, কেন আমি নিজের উদ্যোগে, কেন আমি বিভিন্ন জায়গার মধ্যে গিয়ে আমার এই সমস্যাটা সংকটের জন্য আমরা কাজগুলো করতে পারছি না? এটা আমাদের কলাকৌশলের বোধহয় আমার মনে হয়, ফরেন দিক থেকে বোধহয় আমার মনে হয় আমরা তৈরি করার মধ্যে আমরা কাজ করতে চাই, কিন্তু নিজেরা কোনো
আমি আর পারবো না সময় দিতে, প্লিজ
1 মিনিট স্যার শেষ করছি। আমার মনে হয় এটা ইন্টারন্যাশনালি প্রবলেম, আমার মনে হয় এটা গ্লোবালি প্রবলেম, এটা বাইলেটারালি অবশ্যই থাকবে, এটাকে আমার মনে হয় চাপ সৃষ্টি করতে হবে। এবং সারা বিশ্বে যেহেতু এটা শেষ পয়েন্ট, আমার খুবই দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি আমার, যেহেতু এটা নিয়ে সারা বিশ্বে একটা দৃষ্টি আকর্ষিত হয়েছে, এখন এই সময় বাংলাদেশের পৃথিবীর সমস্ত দেশকে নিয়ে দীর্ঘদিনের এই সমস্যাটা, যেহেতু সকলের চোখ এইদিকে, এখানেই উচিত বাংলাদেশের এই সমস্যাটা আজীবিত না রেখে এটাকে সমস্যার সমাধান করা উচিত বলে আমি
I want to have put a direct question to you.
আরেকটা জিনিস আমি বলি, এটা একটু করে রোহিঙ্গা ইস্যু নিয়ে যাতে এখানে ধর্মীয় কোনো সংঘাত,
আপনি বলেছেন, Professor Barua has been making the point that this is not a Muslim versus Buddhist issue. It's an interstate issue, and even where there are no Buddhists, things do happen, internecine problems within the Muslim countries as well. So it should not be looked into that way. And then he talks about that we have not given adequate attention to Myanmar as a neighbor. It possibly goes to Brigadier Shafat's point that we don't have knowledge and attention on that. And finally, he says there is a broader extra-regional interest in the area's resources. And I have just one direct question to you, and you may decline to answer. Does the Buddhist community in Bangladesh feels any pressure because of the Rohingya problem?
মাঝে মাঝে কিছু ঘটেছে, কিন্তু বাংলাদেশের আমাদের বৌদ্ধরা কিন্তু রোহিঙ্গা ইস্যুতে অত্যন্ত সতর্ক, এবং তাদেরকে সাহায্য সহানুভূতির জন্য আমরা গিয়েছি, আমরা মানববন্ধন করেছি, আমাদের সাহায্য সহযোগিতা আমরা সেখানে গিয়েছি। যেহেতু আমি পার্ট অফ দি পার্সন, আমি তো চট্টগ্রামের একবার শেষ প্রান্তের মানুষ, রোহিঙ্গাদের সঙ্গে আমাদের সম্পর্ক আছে, এবং যেহেতু কুতুপালং সহ কক্সবাজারের আমি মানুষ এবং সাতকারিয়ার আমি মানুষ, সেই জন্য আমি বলছি কিছু অ্যাক্সিডেন্টলি আমার মনে হয় ঘটনা কিন্তু ঘটছে আমাদের বৌদ্ধ ভিক্ষুদের উপর, অনেক সময় রাস্তাঘাটে চলতে, এবং সরকার কিন্তু দায়িত্ব নিয়েছে, এটা সরকারকে ধন্যবাদ জানাবো। বর্তমান সরকার এই জন্য অত্যন্ত সজাগ আছে। তারপরও আমার মনে হয় বিভিন্ন গ্রামে যে বৌদ্ধ ভিক্ষুরা চলাচল করে সেখানে একটা নিষেধ আছে, তাদের চলাফেরা যাতে মানে সংক্ষিপ্ত করা হয়। তো আমার প্রয়োজন আছে, আমি যাচ্ছি, কিন্তু সেখানে যদি গাড়িতে, আমার গাড়ির মধ্যে কিন্তু এটা হয়েছে, কয়েক জায়গায় কিন্তু সেটা হয়েছে।
ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ। Professor Barua makes the point that the Buddhist community in Bangladesh had been always up and doing, has done various kinds of human chains and also raised resources for Rohingyas and had been engaged with them. There have been incidents which are, discrete incidents, not necessarily a pattern, and the government has taken measures, although there are some restrictions on the movement of the Buddhist monks in their certain areas. Thank you very much for those responses. I want to bring in the expat colleagues who would like to come over here. Please, introduce yourself and then come.
Yeah, I'm Mark Pierce from Save the Children.
Yes, please.
So, just three main points, and I know we're talking about options for Bangladesh, but let me just start by saying that we need to understand that we are still in a relief phase from September to February, which is the relief phase, and I can tell you that we are still in we have a very, very high risk in terms of a public health crisis. Right? We know that a high percentage of kids are still severely malnourished. In fact, the studies say that 24% of the children are within this global acute malnutrition. So that's number one. And we do have a serious risk that a cholera outbreak could happen and we're seeing cases of measles already in the camp. So that's number one. Number two is to say in the medium term, there's still a lot that can be done. Number one is we need to improve the efficiency of the aid delivery system. There's gross inefficiencies in how aid is being delivered. You know, we're largely purchasing food and transporting, flying in things from around the world. There's many ways in which we can make this system much more efficient, and therefore we would not have the budgetary costs that were articulated earlier. There's a great opportunity here also to strengthen and extend the government's own systems. Already we see in the health system, it's already providing services to the Rohingya population. But I also like to point out this is a great opportunity to also strengthen the school systems so they can serve all children. They can benefit all children by strengthening and allowing the Rohingya children to get an education. Because I don't think we want the Rohingya children after so many months or so many years to go back uneducated. And last, I think we can also promote greater self-reliance and allow the Rohingya some livelihood opportunities. And again, that reduces the burden on the aid community. My last point is to say that we need to understand, and I've spoken to many people in the camps, that some will never go back. Okay? They will never go back. We have to understand that. Yesterday I had somebody in my office, she spoke to a family, and they said to her, we'd rather commit suicide than go back. So we need to understand that that's the reality.
You have any idea what proportion of the refugees will be like that?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. We know some will never go back. We know some want to go back. We know both of that. And so we need to understand that there is going to be a need for a third country, of repatriation to a third country. Because that's a reality here. I don't think Bangladesh should take the burden. Myanmar will only take a certain number back, and we know some people will never go back.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I think on the pull factor, there's no more Rohingya left to pull, right? So the worry that if we allow them to come, if we improve services, they'll come across. There's hardly any left to come across.
Okay. Thank you very much for alerting us to the child issue. Mr. David Ashley, the Deputy High Commissioner of British High Commission in Dhaka. David.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to CPD for organising a fascinating discussion. I'll make 3 points, hopefully concisely. Firstly, I think the UK, like many others in the international community, pays great tribute to the government and people of Bangladesh for the generosity they have shown in dealing with this influx, and the generosity of ordinary Bangladeshis has been remarkable. And the UK, as a close friend of Bangladesh, has obviously tried to play its part. We've so far provided £47 million since August, and we've also been active internationally, including at the Security Council. Secondly, I think clearly, voluntary, safe, dignified return remains the only long-term solution to this issue for the reasons we know. It's also clear, for the reasons which have been discussed, that may not take place imminently, and therefore that we do have to think beyond February, which is the current phase of the international support. So that will be important. Thirdly, obviously, how the refugees are dealt with in Bangladesh is a matter for Bangladesh. But there's important international experience to bear, of which UNHCR are clearly the best experts. And that includes the issue of where the refugees should be housed in the meantime, while awaiting the creation of the conditions for return. Normally, it is advised that they shouldn't be held too closely to the border because of the obvious security and other issues involved in that, and also that the shouldn't be contained in one single camp because of the security and public health conditions and risks associated. So this is something that as we move, I totally take the point that the emergency phase is by no means over, and Bangladesh and the international agencies have done a remarkable job in dealing with immediate needs, but those needs still remain, and there's still, it's important to remember there's still people coming over, around 1,000 a day, so often in very poor conditions. So there will be a continued need to deal with those immediate needs, but there will also obviously be a need to consider the slightly longer term in terms of how we continue support for those refugees until they can return. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashley, for those comments. Let me bring in Bill Moeller, the head of the political and economic section of the U.S. Embassy in Dhaka. Bill?
Well, thank you very much for this meeting this morning. You asked us not to repeat too much, so I can't really add too much to what David Ashley just said and what Mark from UNICEF said. I think there's a real appreciation for what Bangladesh has done. Of course, the United States stands with Bangladesh. We've made a considerable contribution to the relief effort. We're very proud to do that. Our contributions to the relief effort are not over. We're going to continue to do that. That's going to be a priority. We recognize that this whole Rohingya problem was caused in Myanmar. The solution lies in Myanmar. Bangladesh is just an innocent bystander to this crisis, and we want to help. But as everyone else has said, the chances for near-term repatriation are probably not very good for all the things that people have said here. A considerable number of the refugees are going to be here for probably a long time, and so I just would really encourage Bangladesh to think about what's in its own self-interest in terms of how you accommodate them here, and whether keeping them all in one giant mega camp isolated in Cox's Bazar with no livelihood opportunities, no contact with the local population, is that really in Bangladesh's interest? And only Bangladesh can answer that. There's a lot of other experience in other countries where dispersal to some degree makes sense, maybe throughout the whole country or parts of the country. But these are just things that I think your friends in the international community would just ask you to consider, not for our interests or the interests of UNHCR or anybody else, but just in Bangladesh's own interests. What is best for Bangladesh, given that you're saddled with this burden that is unlikely to go away anytime soon? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muller, for that. May I invite Mr. Michael Schultes from the German mission?
Thank you very much. Michael Schultes, my name. I'm the Deputy Head of Mission at the German Embassy. Thank you very much for organizing this event. I think first and foremost we need to keep in mind that it is really a human tragedy what we have seen over the last months. We've spoken a lot about numbers, and this is certainly necessary and important, but at the same time also we need to keep in mind that with these numbers there are individual experiences, individual traumas which come along. I can only echo what has been said before. We really appreciate Bangladesh's attitude in opening its borders. I am convinced that through this action Bangladesh has helped thousands of people and prevented even more suffering. The efforts Bangladesh has made in the humanitarian area are huge. Germany here also stands at your side, has supported already in many ways, and will continue to support. I think the discussion today has shown that there are many challenges that remain, and I would just like to offer, Germany has also had its own experience with a very great influx of refugees. And certainly there are many points and aspects which are different. But nevertheless, if there is an interest on the Bangladeshi side to hear the experiences Germany has made, we'll certainly be happy to offer this.
I think that's a very generous offer that we can learn from recent experience of Germany in terms of their generous behavior towards the refugees. Thank you very much. I have also Katia Stempeli from the Swiss mission.
Thank you very much. I would like also to join my colleague, first of all, to thank you for this very important day and the CPD for this opportunity to hear about different opinions. I can only join the other missions in saying that also Switzerland commend the generosity of the government of Bangladesh and the humanitarian response. Switzerland helped in different ways with $8.5 million and also in kind and know-how sharing. We absolutely share the main issues raised here. They are very important. Think about the medium-term solutions. Think also about the local community and the financial impact that the crisis has on Bangladesh. Switzerland renews its offer that is ready to further help Bangladesh, and we are happy to do so as much as we can.
Thank you. Let me welcome Dr. Ragnar Gudmundsson to Dhaka, the new head of the IMF. He has just arrived. I take this opportunity of welcoming you and request you to say a couple of words, your reactions to these things, what you have discussed.
Yes, well, thank you very much for your welcoming words and your invitation today. It's been a very rich and insightful dialogue from which I have very much benefited as a newcomer. And in particular, I strongly appreciated your analysis on the economic and budgetary implications of the crisis, even though, as others have said, this is first and foremost a humanitarian crisis, and this is what our primary concern should be. But with regard to the budgetary implications, I think there are three main points that emerge from the discussion. First, to continue mobilizing the financial support of the international community is going to be key moving ahead. Second, we will have to continue thinking through the budgetary implications of the crisis in the near term, and especially thinking about the need to put in place policies that will ensure that social and development spending in Bangladesh will be preserved despite this new challenge. And I think with regard to the long-term implications, it's still very premature to have any firm estimates, because ultimately this will depend on the political process. But I think, again, the approach that you've outlined here with scenario analysis, and I would add to that maybe contingency planning, will be very important moving ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think these are very good advices, for particularly to taking forward our research over there. My chairperson is asking when he will get the chance to talk. And of course, the chief guest, the foreign secretary, really has his long list of points.
Very happy.
No, we would like to listen to you as much as is necessary. But let me finish the round around that. I have a couple of people I still need to bring in, and I'm holding Brigadier Shakwat for that also. Sanjeev Drong.
Thank you. My name is Sanjeev Drong. I represent indigenous peoples in this country. I have only one point. If this Rohingya crisis takes longer time to be solved, then indigenous peoples, especially from the Chittagong hill tracts and from the Bandarban, have a serious concern that this Rohingya crisis will have a serious impact in the entire life of the indigenous peoples, economic life, social and cultural life, and also the pressure on the land, and also the security concerns. I think it would be a serious issue for indigenous peoples. I will conclude in one point. The Rohingyas, some thousands of Rohingyas.
Have you done any assessment in this regard?
We don't have assessment, but we know, because in this morning I talked to also some leaders in the Chittagong hill tracts, and they said that the Rohingyas who arrived earlier in the 70s and 82, they have already settled in 3 areas, in the Naikangchari, Lama and Alikadam, and they've been settled there, and they have already taken the ancestral and customary lands of indigenous peoples. And this is a serious thing, that if this 1 million Rohingyas stayed in this country, and they may move to the lands or forest where the indigenous peoples believe that this is their customary land.
Sanjeev, what we should be doing now then about this?
I request that we have been...
Because we have a perennial problem with the land already unsettled, and then the new variables over here in the equation.
We the indigenous organizations are making a report and doing a study about the impact how they will face, and we also request you and government and also civil society members, you should have study about the impact of indigenous people's life by this crisis.
Thank you. I think that's another dimension. I'm sure CPD is taking note of those. Farah Kubir, ActionAid.
Thank you. First to Famida. There is an informal economy taking place, and disaster capitalism is working very strongly there. So I've been going since August, but just 2 days ago when I came back, I saw a new norm settling in. So the Rohingya women and men are engaging in certain economic activities. So we probably need to look at that, and also the influx in the economy in terms of all the demand, because we are procuring a lot of goods from the local market, and it is not able to provide, so we are extending that to Feni, to Chittagong, and we are getting purchasing. And the humanitarian assistance that is coming in and that is being converted into goods and services are being brought there. So there's an influx, injection into the economy. It would be interesting to do a study from that, and therefore how it is making the economy of Cox's Bazar robust. In fact, beyond Cox's Bazar, that whole division, I think we need to look into it. And it would be interesting to suggest to the government that they need to invest in the infrastructure, because like the airport is in no way able to cater to the demand. So if there could be an investment in extending and having those facilities, the ports need to be facilitated. That was my one point. The other point that I want to highlight is, just before that, informally I've learned the Pope has been asked not to use the word Rohingya when he visits Myanmar. So this is the informal...
Which side has asked him to do that?
Myanmar, of course.
Okay.
Myanmar, of course. And it would be interesting to see whether he follows those instructions. In terms of the role played by Bangladesh so far, my question to the Foreign Secretary is, are we going to take a lead on the issue of the right to refuge? Because we are now looking at a world where there are many refugees, and can Bangladesh play a role in that? Because Bangladesh has played a role in terms of disaster displacement. The other point I would like to bring to the attention of the Foreign Secretary is there is huge ecological, environmental loss and damage. And as we speak today here, the climate conference is going on. There's the Warsaw Instrument mechanism. Would you be taking it up there? And this relates to my other point, which is we don't want to see new funding, basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. We don't want the development fund moved and then invested in the humanitarian crisis of Rohingyas. We want additional and new funds. In terms of taking up the cases to the international community, I think we are already, some of us are documenting. Should you wish to take it to any of the international institutions or courts, we'd be very happy. We are doing photo documentation. We are doing oral narrative because we are not a research organization, but we felt that having those documents would be useful for others to use. So should you want to take it up, especially gender-based violence, because we have our women's spaces, we have those areas, we would be happy to contribute that. And of the population that is here, 70% are in the age group of 0 to 13 or 14, and 70% are women. So I think that we should make a case of taking this to the International Court on the gender-based violence in issues. I'll rest my case there.
Thank you. I guess we had here a colleague from the Russian embassy. Are you still here? He has left. Okay, thank you. Anybody, if not Brigadier Shakwat, please.
Thank you, sir. I think a lot has been spoken. I will just flag 1 or 2, 3 things for the consumption of our Foreign Secretary, and if you could reply. First thing that is it problem between Bangladesh and Myanmar, or it is Rohingya and Myanmar? In that case, what are we doing? Are we doing advocacy for Rohingyas? Are we playing as advocate of the Rohingyas? Or we are leaving it to only international community? And why should international community be interested if we are not interested? So first, if you could kindly highlight. Second information that I would like to give you, that it's not that China is wholly in control of Myanmar. Russia has moved in, and the whole Myanmar Air Force is now dependent on Russia. They have bought MiG-29 advanced, and they are they're doing away with the Chinese aircrafts. Therefore, there are room that we can play with the China. Third point that I would like to point out, whole Rakhine state has been militarized the way it never was. There are 3 corps in whole of Rakhine from north to south. So that's one issue that we should keep in mind when we talk about future. The last thing that I would say, sir, that now being a Rohingya, call it refugee, call it anything, has become a lucrative part, because the Myanmar is now saying, go to Bangladesh. You see, the whole international community is giving them the money and giving them the shelter, giving them the food. So these people are coming on that issue as well. Lastly, I would again request our Foreign Secretary, why we are not using Rohingya as they rightfully ask that we should be called Rohingya as one of the tribe of Myanmar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brigadier Shakwat. I didn't follow. You are telling me that other than the push factor, there is also a pull factor?
So there is definitely pull factor, and that factor is visible, because they never got the treatment. I'm not saying that they shouldn't get, but I'm saying that see that the medical facilities in Bangladesh, see the money is coming, see the international community is doing. Therefore, we should be rather, as I said, quick in disposing this if we can, but I give you 20 years. Thank you.
You had been pretty miser on that.
20 years?
You had been very conservative on that.
I said 20 years time.
You have been very conservative.
I couldn't think beyond that, because I don't know whether
Palestinians are there more than 40 years.
But I don't know whether I'll be there in 20 years or not. That's why I gave my lifetime.
So, colleagues, I am going to bring now to the Ambassador Shafiul has sent me a card before, and I had been very, very inappropriate in not inviting you earlier. But can you, sir, keep it in 1 minute?
You are very right not to give me earlier, because I just had my field experience in Jordan in 1990, following Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. Millions of people passed through Jordan. There's only outlet, and we had 70,000 Bangladeshi stranded there. I was sent there to look after them. I don't know how to. I was a counselor in Abu Dhabi. Then ultimately, then Crown Prince Hassan, he became the chairman of the coordination committee. And every agency, either UN or any other agency, they used to report to the committee, and committee used to give direction.
Yeah.
To how to.
Are you concretely telling us that we should create a committee like that?
Yeah, I suggested about 2 months before when the thing came up that the Chittagong division GOC should be the coordinator. He has the resources, he has the manpower, and he has the vehicles, and he has the disciplined forces. So that this, for the 6 months, he should set the things in order, then the civilian will take over. I suppose that is the way that a coordination should take place.
Okay, thank you.
And number 2 point is this about if there, of course, if there the hyper-diplomatic activity, you see set in the background of Bangladesh against China, Russia and India, However, Bangladesh diplomat can go beyond their limit, and the diplomacy has its own limit. Thank you.
Thank you. We have heard many stakeholders today, but there is one stakeholder we haven't heard as of today. That's the private sector. So I would like to invite Mr. Rashid Maqsood Khan, one of our leading industrialists, and who had been the president of the Bangladesh-Myanmar Chamber of Commerce. I think he... Bangladesh-Myanmar Business Promotion Council. Do you see what are the business sector implication of all this crisis? Please, Kanchayapke then, tell microphone then. Taratari. এখানে সামনে ওনার কাছে দেন Mr. Rashid Maqsood Khan.
Thank you very much. Well, I've been listening to very interesting deliberations, and which have been said very rightly. And I must first of all thank CPT for organizing this very important dialogue. Anyway, as the chairman of Bangladesh-Myanmar Business Promotion Council, I have had the opportunity of visiting Myanmar several times. Even I led business delegations there. We had held exhibition of...
Khansaib, I have a very strict question. A crisis karone Bangladesh-Myanmar business, will it get affected?
Yes, of course. And now what I feel that the bilateral relations between Myanmar and Bangladesh have not been exercised properly. That's what I feel. And I would also say that our diplomacy also should have been more strong. And more often than not, mostly the army personnel were there as ambassadors, but we found only very few bona fide diplomats there. But I remember when I visited, there were the ambassadors were diplomats, and they have also been very articulate in building the relationships with Myanmar. And during our visit with the delegation, they have been very cordial. They wanted to establish business relations with us. They came up with a lot of propositions, and we had entered into a number of...
Khansaib, do you see a role for the private sector in solving the problem?
Private sector...
Can you take a delegation up there and talk to your friends over there?
Well, it may be possible, and I am sure that at least we can focus the sentiment of our people, and that we are no enemy to Myanmar, but we want to establish our rights, and we would like to see not to create any pressure on Bangladesh by putting an influx of the Rohingya refugees. And I think that is what. And another point I would say, that we must also make use of the other forums like BIMSTEC and ASEAN,
that's well taken.
And BCIM. These we have not done so very strongly. This is my recommendation.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody who thinks that one issue which has not been mentioned needs to be mentioned, or forever hold your peace? No. One issue. 10 seconds, please.
That is the National Security Council. We need a National Security Council.
Yes, that's...
Since you brought the issue of the private sector, recently the Foreign Traders Association organized a conversation, and we're looking at the Rohingya challenges, and they were also discussing about potential investment in terms of capacity building and so on. So maybe they can be an ally, and this is made up of international foreign buyers and investors.
Okay. Thank you.
I think I better speak, so I'll ask him question.
Okay.
Very brief. It's a question again to the Foreign Secretary and follows up on your point. What is going to be the way forward? Do we look for more engagement, whether it's trade, investment, exchanges, or do we take a hard line in terms of external pressure?
Somebody told that with Myanmar we don't have an one issue agenda. So there must be others. The Foreign Secretary, of course, will come in. Colleagues, thank you very much for this fantastic discussion. I request you...
One sir.
Yes,
আমার মনে হয় একটা জিনিস আমরা বলতে চাই, এখানে অনেকে বলছে যে রোহিঙ্গাকে মানে একটা যুদ্ধ দেহি, এটা আমার মনে হয় ঠিক না। আমার মনে হয় শান্তির মাধ্যমে
making the point, don't make it an aggressive
way. No. Hatred does not cease by hatred. It ceases by love and compassion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The point is made. Colleagues, I seek your... yes, General.
Istumir conflict, there has been a special envoy from the ASEAN. So if we can engage the ASEAN as well as East Asia, and in this special envoy could be from their side, who is have the acceptance by Myanmar as well as all the countries, that could be one of the solutions.
Yes, ASEAN issue has been recommended also in our paper, and others have mentioned too. Yes, that's it. And we are expecting a number of high-profile visits in this month over, to Bangladesh. Colleagues, please give a big hand to all of you and to yourself for making those contribution. It was a very, very rich contribution, and it's my privilege and honor to invite our chairman, Professor Rehman Subhan, to make his comments.
Since I claim any special knowledge, I can only in a way put questions rather than sum up what is being said at the end. What I would perhaps like to bring to everyone's attention is a contextualization of what is happening today. Sadly, we have only one researcher on the Rohingya issues, our friend the Brigadier. And presumably in his researches he would have found out that the hostility of the indigenous Burmese population to the presence of people from the Indian subcontinent in general and to the Rohingyas in particular is a long-standing issue, and that the substantial presence of the Indian, Bangladeshi, Pakistani elements who had been there for many, many years, particularly in Rangoon and Sitwe, in places like that, were virtually driven out of the country and their businesses and property seized when the first military takeover actually took place, and that the general hostility towards the remaining people from the subcontinent, who they identified as the Rohingyas, in fact actually dates back to the Second World War, if not longer, and in fact this is really the culmination of that particular process. So that the qualitative change, which I think Farooq pointed out, which is going on over there, is now whether the military are going for what we may term as the final solution, because they were intermediate solutions of driving out people of South Asian background and Muslims for many years, but this is their final solution, and that if in fact they have driven out all these people, the residual are in fact going to follow. Now, in these circumstances, the problem which you will have to face for all the diplomacy which you actually carry out is that if you are really being at the receiving end of what is clearly identified as ethnic cleansing, then in my historical memory, the contemporary examples of ethnic cleansing that we have seen have rarely led to a restoration of the cleansed people from the places where they were expelled. I will ask you to go back to the partition of India, when the West Pakistanis ethnically cleansed the Hindus and Sikhs from West Pakistan, and the people of Punjab, East Punjab, ethnically cleansed the Muslims from that part of the world. And neither of them ever went back or had any expectation of going back, even though the respective governments, the Nehru-Liaquat Pact, committed that there should be some conscious attempt to take them back. The second and living example of ethnic cleansing, of course, is what has happened in Palestine, where the Israelis ethnically cleansed a great majority of the Arab population from the areas which they are now calling Israel. And in fact, in spite of UN commitments made at that time that they had the right of return to go back, this has become one of the central issues of the impasse in any settlements between the Palestinians and the Israelis, of the denial of the right of return, even though there are innumerable UN resolutions in support of this. And the relevant point of the Israeli initiative, which is of course now extended into the lands which were occupied after their military aggression into the remainder of Palestine, is that even where you are creating facts on the ground and there are any innumerable number of UN resolutions, you can in fact get away with this if you have got a major power to exercise its veto in the Security Council and to in fact extend its full diplomatic support behind you to in fact do this. So one of the morals of the international community is that if you want to go in for things like ethnic cleansing and you want to seriously misbehave with your citizens, you better have the protection of a big power behind you. I think this is one of the great rules of behavior, and you are seeing many examples of that. So in these circumstances, I think what our government will have to deal with is that at the end of the day, the powers that be, which happen to be the military, have now taken the decision to actually solve the Rohingya problem by expelling them. And not only then have they taken the initiative themselves, but they've engaged the population, led by Viratu, the Buddhist monk, who is their leader, and involving a broad constituency of people to participate, so that the problem which Suu Kyi is facing is not just a problem of the fact that the military run parts of a foreign policy, but that she is also facing a democratic problem, that in fact her constituencies, who should normally have been supportive of her, have been bought in by the military, and this may well be a political tactic of the military to further consolidate their position by in fact isolating her on the Rohingya issue from the normal constituency which would have been a main source of support in challenging the military. So in these circumstances, whatever international diplomacy we do with the objective of persuading the Myanmar government to take them back, at the end of the day, if they have made a categorical decision to cleanse, how far can this be a sustainable effort? There may be token efforts, and if you have already seized their lands, burnt their villages, taken their assets, seized the harvested crops which they left behind, obviously they are going to do everything possible to make sure that these people do not go back, and if they go back, they are not likely to stay very long. So that this has now become a racially divided issue, which has in fact got long-term implications in terms of the domestic circumstances, political circumstances of Myanmar. So that what international pressure is going to persuade the Myanmar government to actually take back a significant number to make a difference to us, and to in fact then rehabilitate them there with the normal rights of citizens, is a big question, which certainly we have no indication that there is any indication that this is going to happen, and that the whole approach has been to create as many obstacles as possible to getting people to go back in terms of the understanding they have with you. So, given these circumstances, I think the problem would be that what are then our available options? This is without prejudice to our continuing all efforts at our disposal to get the community to support us internationally, to even go to the International Criminal Court if necessary, and all other fora. But at the end, the bottom line is, if you are dealing with a set of situations, a regime, and a population which is determined to get rid of the Rohingyas, how do you address this? And in these circumstances, what are our own long-term options? Are we then also willing to face up to the fact that there has been a slight demographic change in the population of Bangladesh through the addition of perhaps 0.5% to our current population, and that these have to be accommodated within our society? Or do we get into an international negotiation where we distribute half of them across the international community eventually, if this is a long-term solution? Now, these are issues which we may not be willing to publicly discuss, and I'm sure that the government will in fact be pondering the diplomatic implications of thinking of these more serious structural problems which we are being faced with, and how far they want to in fact bring this into the public domain. But amongst us and privately and within the government itself, you will have to ponder the implications of these circumstances. I mean, because the final solution which would have been available, after all, the Indians in '71 showed that there was a final solution at the end of the day, when you had 10 million refugees who were creating both an economic and then an emerging security problem on their borders. This option, unfortunately, is not available to us. So what other options which will in fact compel Myanmar to rethink its political approach to the Rohingyas is, of course, an issue which we need to consider. As I said, I've posed questions, and I don't actually expect you to give full answers to these, because it may not even be diplomatic to do so. But I certainly put them on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for putting the whole question in historical perspective. Thank you very much. So it's now my honor to invite the Honorable Foreign Secretary, Md Shahidul Haque. As I said, he is very much exposed to all these issues, and he is managing them on a daily basis. And we are grateful on behalf of CPD. We are very appreciative of the fact that he has taken his time off, notwithstanding his schedule, on a Saturday, and has been spending the time with you since the morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Guest, and the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much, Chairman, Professor Rehman Subhan, distinguished panelists. I'm really puzzled as to where to start and how to start. So I'll start by saying that it was a great opportunity for me to listen to all of you. So thanks for all those ideas. I'm sure those will help us in many ways. I will start out with someone who has taught us diplomacy in the Foreign Office, with Farooq Subhan sir. So I will try and see whether I could live up to his expectation in terms of the questions that he has raised, responding to those. So we have done a comparative analysis in terms of 78, 79, 91, 92, and 2016 and 17, and trying to find out as to where are the difference. And that actually led us to decide that it is not only bilateral that possibly will bring result. This time we will have to have
bilateral plus. So that's, you see manifestation of that as to how we changed and tuned our approach. On the second question of yours, sir, on the China and India relation, I fully agree with you. In fact, some of the arguments that you put forward this morning, we have used it, and I have used it very intensely with both our far neighbor and neighbor. On the issue of 4 questions that you asked, in terms of engagement, yes, we are yet not in a position to decide that we will try and reduce the engagement with Myanmar. We still feel that that is one of the way to bring this whole issue to a peaceful resolution. So we'll continue to engage and re-engage and intensify our engagement with Myanmar simultaneously with our international engagements. And depending on the platform, depending on the situation, we'll try and tune it to see which one at what stage needs greater attention and focus. On the issue of ethnic cleansing, genocide, I think for the time being we'll leave it to the international community, both the civil society and the governments, to bring in that narrative onto the international table, and also do whatever they wish to do with the thing that has happened in that part of the world. So, and we will see in which stage we would engage ourselves at this stage. And here I would like to also flag that this is a conflict between Myanmar and its own nationals. Bangladesh in no way created this environment or a conflict. So we have to keep that in perspective, and that brings to your question. Bangladesh is trying to become a responsive and responsible state, a state which responds to humanitarian crisis. We cannot totally oblivion of things that is happening in our neighborhood, and that's not the good neighborly behavior that one is expected. So it is more of a humanitarian response, responsible response, and responsive response, and it is led by our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. It is desired that we should continue to remain human in terms of dealing with a large flow of people. On the issue of ARSA, I'm not in a position to share things with you on that, sir. That was your last question, sir. But I can assure you that we are aware of it. We were aware even when there wasn't a large-scale movement between Bangladesh and Myanmar. When there was a small presence, we were closely monitoring the issue. We are ensuring that that Bangladesh land resources or people are not used for anything against Myanmar, and that's a stated policy. I have articulated it in a number of times with the Myanmar government, both in Bangladesh and in Nepal. We have a zero tolerance. In the past, we have strongly dealt with it. There were occasions when Bangladesh did BJP and others a joint combing operation. There were arrests, and we have also handed over 2 suspects to Myanmar in the past. So our record in that is quite clear. And as of today, we are keeping a strong monitoring mechanism in place in the area to ensure that we don't fall into that trap. That brings me to the issue of Dr. Imtiaz. I kind of tend to agree that radicalization would not emerge from the camp, because if that were the case, we'll have already huge cases of that, and it seems that's not what has happened. And that is why we are strongly, closely monitoring involvement of both outsider, not only individuals, but also international community, including some of the INGOs. And that's where you sometimes hear, and I do hear very loudly when I go abroad and speak, that we are not allowing NGOs, INGOs to function or give access to those areas, and my response is we have given unconditional full access to everybody who deserves it. There are INGOs who have an extremely bad history of engagement in Cox's Bazar, in the Rohingya camps, so we have this time also not allowed them. And this is documented, recorded. I have written letters on that to our other ministries. So since I'm with Dr. Imtiaz, I would stick there. There's a specific reason that we had a debate as to whether we should declare them refugees or we continue to call them undocumented Myanmar nationals, or we do something else. After a long debate and our own experience of 78, 79, our seniors' experience, because you know our foreign minister was deeply involved in 91, 92, with his own experience and experience of the world, we decided for the time being we'll try and call them as a forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals, not citizens. It is written because I have written letters to various ministry to clarify on this. And there's a number of reasons that we did so. One is that, you know, strange, this time when we went to New York, the Myanmar wanted these people to be called refugees in writing. In fact, the right to reply, you know, in the UNGA to our Honorable Prime Minister's statement, they said refugees. So, you know, in the past they have never suggested so, and they oppose involvement of any international organization along with UNHCR. So if you are not open to engagement of an entity which is responsible for administering the refugee convention, why do you want to call them refugee? So the answer is very clear, and this is not something absolutely non-flexible. What we are suggesting that for the time being, they are forcibly displaced, and this is, sir, with due respect, is not a terminology that Bangladesh created. It's there even in the World Bank. So let's not talk about the Human Rights Organization and others. And we kept Myanmar because we don't want them to be detached from Myanmar, even as an intellectual exercise. And we said that they're nationals. We know that citizenship has been taken away in 1982, so nationals. So keeping the option open to have the negotiations, they are their people, they have been pushed out of your territory, so you think of taking them back in dignity and safety. So that is precisely the reason. In terms of access, we have given full access, full liberty to all UN agencies in that part of the world. And I'm someone with the experience, I can assure you that no one has ever given so much of a space to both international media and to in INGOs and to international organizations. Almost unconditional, except one or two. So much so that to expedite the visa thing, Foreign Office has taken over the responsibility to issue visa, including international media, and that's why you see a huge presence of international media in that part of the world, and it will continue. So that's to give response to your one. We are aware of shortcomings or limitations of using bilateral approach, but I think looking at all options, that is the option that we have to deal with, because that brings me to the whole issue of third country settlement. You know, please do not take me otherwise. At this stage, there's not a single country in the world to take one Rohingyas to their country as a third country settlement. And this has been the case for quite some years. So when we sit down for negotiation, I have asked at least 3 important destination places. Would you be interested to take few thousands, whenever the time comes, that there's no appetite. So that's the reason that we cannot talk about third country settlement. Not that we are opposed to it. There has been third country settlement out of Rohingyas also in the past. narrative. We are quite aware of the narrative that Myanmar military and Myanmar government has been using, but I see that there is not much acceptance or recognition of that narrative internationally. And this is, I see on different occasions that they have, I think they have failed to sell their narrative, not that on every occasion, but there are many occasions, including recently I was giving a lecture at Oxford on this particular issue, and I see the counter narrative that the professor students of Oxford were giving to us, because one of the slides that I used that is what is the narrative they use, and they said, Mr. Haque, we know and we don't believe in it, so let's move on to something that Bangladesh wants to say. We are looking at all kinds of future options. We had a discussion on this in the television about the international conference. I said that we have taken that on board. We are also sort of exploring possibilities of getting some co-sponsors, both from the international community. We had some discussions with some of our friends who were visiting last week or week before. So we'll see. And at an appropriate moment, with enough support, we would possibly go for an international conference to look at all aspects of this issue. Do you have some more time? Yes. Okay. On the issue of, since we are in the international conference, thank you very much, Mr. Musa, for being in Geneva and sharing the whole thing. Before that pledging conference, we were in a dilemma that should we go internationally asking for help and resources, or we let the international community voluntarily come forward and help. And so far that has been the case. We have not literally gone in a big way asking for resources. The reason being that we are asking for a political support. Whenever we met, including our foreign minister, we said, this is a political issue, it's a humanitarian issue, you have to resolve it. In order to resolve it, we need your political support to tell Myanmar government that this is not what they can get away with. So our focus has overwhelmingly been the political support, less on the humanitarian support. I think Bangladesh, given its own resources and economic stage, can take care of this people, and our Prime Minister has been extremely vocal on that. So on the political area, we have been seeking huge support, and I think for the international support, there will be time for that, because for now I don't see any sign of fatigue setting in so early. In terms of international pledging, our very capable permanent representative, Ambassador Shamim, actively participated. We have saw that on the web. So our presence was there, although initially we were not very forthcoming on that. Thanks for the commitment. But I have said through those kinds of pledging conference in the past, and I thought in the Rohingya case made a very good case. I don't think there has been so much of resources flowing in one pledging conference. You might correct me, but I think the resource, the pledging conference did much better and beyond our expectations, even in the international arena. So the case is not that gloomy in terms of humanitarian support. So for the time being, we are going ahead with the diplomatic advocacy and others, but time to time the whole resource issue comes in, and when you are making a case and saying that we have over 1 million people from a neighboring country taken refuge in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh being Bangladesh, the difficulties in getting resources and others. You don't have to really ask for it. The case will automatically lead to both political support and resource. And I can assure you that although we have not articulated the manner it has been articulated today, but we do indicate that, and indicate very strongly. Because they also know in the absence of resources what crisis could emerge in that part of Bangladesh. Thank you, UNHCR, for reiterating your support. We need support, including UNHCR, and when the whole issue of return comes in, the involvement of UNHCR would be much larger, much bigger. And one thing I want to also flag here. This has also been part of their kind of a strategy or narrative, that send all these Rohingyas, 1 million Rohingyas or 1.2 million Rohingyas into Bangladesh, and the problem goes to Bangladesh. And we can wash up our hand. So when you are talking about refugees, what that we should do or could do, both in terms of our civil society, media, and the government, I suggest, and I've been doing it, please do not forget that origin of this is in Myanmar. So do not shift the focus of your persuasion or pressure from there. Otherwise, after a certain period, like Palestine, everybody will forget that who is the responsible party into this. You equate victim with perpetrators. So that syndrome has to stop. I'm extremely happy that our Action 8 colleague did bring out, Farapa did bring out the whole issue of do not shift resources that's there for development into this. And this is a general tendency, and we have been opposing it. In fact, there is a resolution in the UNGA linking humanitarian assistance with development assistance. So there is already a global move to take away the development money and give it to the humanitarian. It's happened in Syria, in Turkey. And so there is there we have to be much stronger. That Bangladesh should not pay because they hosted $1 million in terms of their development assistance. Opinion of the Myanmar people. We are aware of that. We have done a study. On the whole issue of research, the Foreign Office is not, Farooq Subansar would be able to say, but he was one of those who pushed us to do research. I remember my first research on migration done because of his insistence. So that's how I got into the field of migration, sir, for the Commonwealth, if you remember. We should put these things on record. Then at the end, he was supposed to go for the conference, and he asked me to put up a paper, and I did put up a paper. Then he said, "Why don't then you go?" I ended up going to the Commonwealth, and that's how I move into the world of migration. So we do research. On this, we have been doing research for the last 5 years. Our ambassador in Myanmar, another very capable researcher, Sufiur Rahman, has done brilliant papers on this, which we have shared with our friends and colleagues globally. We have been doing it for the last 3 years because we anticipated that there would be an unsettling situation in this, or could be. Not that we could also foresee the 2016 and 17. So we did do research, and that research took us to England, and that's how we came to know about the Baxter report of 1940, which the British did before they had a discussion to declare the independence of Burma, to see where the Rohingyas are. And there's a very interesting report. If you're interested, I can share with you. And then we also subsequently did a number of studies on that, which we shared. We use it when we sit down for negotiations. So if somebody is doing a research, could get in touch with us. We can also help mutually help each other in terms of enriching our understanding of the whole complex problem. Somebody raised about Kofi Annan report. Bangladesh, one of the first countries to came out and say, despite its own limitations, that we would like Myanmar to implement the Kofi Annan Commission report. And the reason being that we were engaged in the drafting. The Kofi Annan, some of you don't know, the members of the Kofi Annan Commission, except Kofi Annan, visited Bangladesh, went to Cox's Bazar, had a long discussion with some of our academicians and us. So, and you'll see clear footprint of that. In fact, the first preliminary report didn't have any chapter on citizenship. Eventually, that became the most important chapter as to how to review the citizenship, not only of Rohingya but other ethnic communities also, because they have there's other problem with other ethnic communities, and that is possibly one reason that militaries, the Myanmar military is finding it very difficult to accept it. Soft approach versus hard approach. The problem that we have is that Myanmar is our neighbor, and they will continue to remain our neighbor. It's not that they can move away or we can move out. So they will remain there, and we'll have to have a good relation with them. Now, the Prime Minister, in writing, said that Myanmar আমাদের প্রতিবেশী, মিয়ানমারের সাথে ভালো সম্পর্ক বজায় রেখে রোহিঙ্গা সমস্যার সমাধান করতে হবে. That was about a year back. So for us the challenge was, how do you do it? So that's why we adopted a covert approach, that bilaterally okay, but internationally we did not make it open till the things blew up. And as of today it continues to remain a challenge. How do you do that? And that is why some of the things that starts with G and other alphabets, it's very difficult for us to articulate and work. Not that we are not thinking, not that we are preparing, but at this stage we are not looking at that path. So it is, as of today, is a mix of soft and hard approach. When we go and meet our friends, we argue for this particular community in a very tough and hard manner. Some of the colleagues are sitting here and they know how difficult we could be with them in terms of pursuing them to put pressure on Myanmar. So that is not an issue. Sir, thank you very much for putting the context of this. We have done also similar kind of an exercise, but we did not relate it to our own partition and others, because we thought that we'll keep it separate. In fact, we also thought of other population movements in this region and also other region as to how this forced population movement normally manifests and how it ends and where it has been better managed and which way. So we have done that bit of use. Exercise within our own house. Some of my colleagues are actually sitting here who have given day and night to do that, and after that we have taken our strategy. Somebody said that we are not using Rohingya word. I think we did stop that in 2013. In 2013 we had a foreign office consultations and we went to Nepito and we proposed that let's bring in some kind of an acceptable terminology so that it is not any more debatable. Wherever we go, we say Rohingya and they say Bengali, and it becomes sort of a, the whole issue is hijacked. So we said we will not call Rohingya if you don't call Bengali. The agreement was they will say that is Muslim from northern Rakhine or Rakhine. So that was the what you call gentleman's agreement. And we stopped actually after that using the word Rohingya. Huh? No, let me finish. And after a few months and year, we realized that somewhere they were using it and somewhere they are not using it. And we said enough is enough. So we started calling them Rohingyas, about which they are not very happy. Even in the Security Council, when the chair of the Security Council this time around called the Rohingya, they took the floor and opposed it. So the world knows it, but we have no qualms about it. We are using it. Our Prime Minister has used it in the UNGA statement. I don't think there are any questions left, but what I'll do, currently we are focusing on signing a bilateral arrangement for return of Rohingyas. This is the 6th, 7th version that we are working on. We are very close in terms of reaching a return agreement with Myanmar authorities. Our foreign minister would be going to Myanmar on 22nd and 23rd. Hopefully we will be able to bring down the differences that we have in a couple of places in terms of the latest draft and then sign it and immediately go into implementation, because we would like to exhaust all avenues of bilaterally settling it when still there are international players acting. And we'll see as to how that go. We are in our house very optimistic. We think that we would be able to resolve this peacefully. But if that's not what happens, then we'll certainly have other options on the table. We have meanwhile continuing to work on other options, which I will not share with you. But I can assure you that currently the return arrangements, we are bent upon keeping some human rights issues in the arrangements, well articulated. At least in the paper it should be clearer, so they know what is expected out of the government of Myanmar. At the end, I'll conclude by saying that thank you very much for bringing and doing the research on impact, which will be extremely useful. We have also sort of compiled the thing that the government has done so far in terms of giving them various kind of issues. I'll leave this with you. In addition to the land that we have allocated for the camp, that is something, there are some, there's an interesting, I was attending a Professor Sen's lecture on MDG indicators, and he said, there are indicators which you can quantify, sir, and there are which you will never be able to quantify. It's a qualitative indicator, and those are the most important part. So here is quantitative, but it is the burden that the government of Bangladesh, the people of Bangladesh that have taken, you'll never be able to sort of put it into any figure. So that's where the challenge is. And I think it was a very right decision. We debated on that, and that's why that for 3-4 days they were standing on the no man's land, and there was almost no pressure, because people in the international people were not possibly aware that things are happening before us, and we debated in-house. Our Prime Minister had a long process of taking a decision, but at the end we said, no, in 71, if we were not allowed to walk across India, what would have happened to some of us, if not, sir, all of you, but some of us. So giving that and as I said that, Bangladesh in many sense is a very responsible and responsive state. So we cannot be doing something which will go against our moral values and standing. And I think looking back, I think it was a very correct decision. We couldn't have done anything better than this. And for that, we have to recognize the courage of our Prime Minister. It needs a lot of courage. Look at Europe. Some of the European countries demobilize military, bring in tank to stop people coming in. Long time back, a year back. Except Germany and Sweden, both of them decided we have to take our international responsibilities and burden and welcome them. Not many European countries did, despite the fact they were party to the 1951 convention, which we are not. So I think it was a very courageous decision on the part of the Prime Minister. So thank you very much. I think it has been a extremely learning process. I can assure you that in our humble way, with our limited intellectual abilities, whatever we are thinking is best, we are doing it, and we also listen to you all the time, which comes out publicly, and try and tune our approach and policies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, let me conclude by making the final couple of points. First of all, on all your behalf, we are thanking the Foreign Secretary for his very exhaustive response to your very insightful comments. I wanted to let you know that all these proceedings was being podcasted live through YouTube and others. So we have reached out to 13,400 people. While you are speaking, you have been listened to by so many people, and total view have been through on the video at this moment 1,700. So you please be reassured that you have been heard very broadly, and all the proceedings will be publicly available on CPD's website as well as on YouTube and elsewhere. Let me conclude by saying just a couple of things to remind you. 2016-17 saw the peak number of refugees in the world. We have now 65 million refugees in the world at this very moment. It never been before such a large number. And if you look at the number of host countries, where does Bangladesh stand at this moment? The top country which is hosting maximum number of refugees is at this moment Turkey. In fact, followed by Pakistan. And then somewhere down the line, number 5th, if you take the 1 million figure, Bangladesh will be I think the 4th, if not 5th, biggest, largest host of the refugees in the world. Just imagine, in couple of weeks, Bangladesh has shot up to the 4th position as the host country in the world. Now, let me tell you somebody who has been twice refugee in his life. I had been twice refugee in my life. So I can tell you there cannot be more miserable position than being a refugee. The helplessness, the loss of self-esteem, the loss of dignity, the unpredictability which is there, that you just don't know that whether you want to live in this country or you will aspire for something else, that is something which really diminishes a human being to the least. I think that is not a desirable situation. So our country, our government has gone out to open the borders and bring them in, has done the right generous things to do, 71, and of course thereafter. I think this is notwithstanding our level of development, our per capita income, or our resource endowments, we have shown that generosity does not depend on your level of development. It depends on your level of development of your heart and your attitude to human beings. I think that has to be recognized very strongly. The second issue which has come out is from the discussion today is very clear that there are things which are conceptually we need to still sort out, which is there. The office of the Foreign Office has taken a position on certain issues. They have been well advised possibly. Whether we use genocide or we use ethnic cleansing, whether we say it is non-military aggression, that was the term, the other one which was used. So this is something which will evolve as we move, because language is not language. It is also an instrument of communication and diplomacy and all other things. Regarding the options, I think you could hear from all the people who have been talking, two broad options have emerged. Although the Foreign Secretary has mixed those both in his speech. One option is that this is the hard option, the hawkish option. Somehow some of the proposals have fallen into that, and some of the proposals fall into the dovish option. The hawkish option essentially talks about, I don't mean imtiaz on that, he may not have meant that, more internationalization, more hard responses, and possibly they look at it as a short-term solution and do away with it faster. This is one approach which is coming out. The other approach which is coming out is more the soft power play, the more longer term, more bilateral approach, and use multi-stakeholder engagements and etc. So these are the two broad options which are still out there, which came out, and the Foreign Secretary wants to tell us that these two are being mixed at this moment in order to pursue this particular dealing with the issue. And he says that other options are always available. I wonder that what that creative ambiguous sentence really means, that what is an option is an option which you can only exercise. It is then, otherwise it is not an option. So the other issue which has come out very strongly is that the implication part. We have done a study, we have done use monetary values for various things, but we were reminded from the floor there are much more spillovers in the which are happening. We were reminded of the implication to our own indigenous minorities, implication for the Buddhist communities. We should be super sensitive about these things, that these issues should not destroy our own social harmony and our internal peace in many ways, apart from the peace, the security and integrity issue, and should not get into other health hazards, women's trafficking, looking after children, and also the environmental and other consequences. The economic part needs to be studied much more deeply, what impact it has both from the supply side and the demand side on the market, the prices, the wages, inflation. All these issues are very much out there, is to be seen as we move. And last but not the least, we need to really be more knowledgeable, more sensitive, and to understand better our own neighbors, and as we expect that they would do the same today. I think we are in, I don't know, for a short haul or a long haul, but we are in for a substantial challenge at this moment, no doubt about it. The multifaceted dimension of it is only unfolding before us. I think we should be very, very ready, and ready to invest in terms of not only on the humanitarian and versus development, as we deal with them, how we move with the host country people and etc. That is being mentioned over here, but also in terms of having more research, more knowledge. It is not a self-serving proposal I am giving. It is just to say that we need more national capacity in this particular area in the future, both looking into the near neighbors, but also through that looking at the international dimension and other regional things over there. We can wish Bangladesh best of luck, and with the help of our friends across the world, we hope that we will find a acceptable solution to this big humanitarian and development crisis as we face today. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you. Thank you.
Sometimes the narrative self explaining is there. But implication to